professionals that you must not incite, you must not abuse people's privacy, you must, the things that are really, really very understandable. Yeah. And those ones will observe them. But how about those people who you have not sensitized, and all you're doing is to invite them to register with you? So we came into that gap to say freedom of expression is broad, like he said, but this one is now being shrunk by this act. And I think we agreed at some point that there was a rush to roll out this exercise without involving the people that directly affects. Two, there are other laws that can guide such practices. Yeah, like there's a law on privacy. There's a law when you defame other people. There's a law now the Computer Misuse Act as amended is very clear on what they do and they don't. So we're like, okay, why is UCC coming in now to take a portion of the practice of these laws, yeah, and make it theirs? Right. And well knowing that, UCC was one of our friends. Actually, UCC at some point does a tremendous job, and Waiswa here has always updated us on what they are doing on so many fronts, and even invited us to be part of those processes to see how things are playing out. And that is a proactive way of getting people to understand and appreciate what we're doing. But then it was at this point where we're saying, how are people aggrieved by your actions going to seek for redress? In case I don't agree with the authorization, yeah, where do I run to? Yeah. To you again? To court? So it wasn't clear, the process was incomplete. And that is how we came in along with other human rights minded actors to say, UCC, this is wrong. Now that everyone has their phone, the cameras there are not for designs. The recorders, it is that I can now record this and disseminate. I don't need the authorization from Waiswa, and that has lived to date. And there is, for me, something called, of course, selective application of even this directive. Right. There are people who will disseminate a lot of information, and Waiswa will keep quiet. And if somebody, a foot soldier or someone called that name or somewhere comes out, they will say, you're not authorized. Why are you doing this type of work?
Doesn't that sort of depend on, again, the guidelines that there are? It's a classic thing. If when you're driving on the road and you're under the speed limit and you have your driving permit with you, you don't get scared of being stopped by the traffic police. In fact, you smile at them and wave and say hello. But if you know that your tires are old, your third party has expired, surely then you have cause to be concerned and you can't complain if the policeman, you say, how come you didn't stop that guy, you stopped me? Doesn't that become the same thing? Because again, the idea is that the ones who normally complain are the ones who have fallen foul of the guidelines. But also, I wanted to ask you, Mr. Sempala, if you think about it, you're saying, right of freedom of expression, and I think Abdul Salam has mentioned very clearly that there's a difference between you having a right to express yourself and where you do that. If Mr. Mchunguzi goes and picks a phone and records a small video in Zambia of two kids who are fighting each other in a playful manner and acting, and then goes and says there's genocide happening, and he's doing it under a YouTube channel, and he has given it a name. He's called it JM Media, right? How do you deal with that under the Computer Misuse Act? I'm just trying to say, from my perspective, it seems like where UCC is coming from is in a good place, and it's not something that should be contested in any manner. At least you need to make a case for... Yeah. And I entirely wouldn't like for anyone who incites violence or who compromises the security of our country, or somebody who goes deep into people's private lives and makes them their business. The laws are extremely exhaustive on all those ones, with or without authorization from UCC, right. Mr. Chinobe to be particular. And so consistently, people have gone to court, and people have been charged, tried. Some have even been convicted on those grounds. So our contention was, are the other laws not consistent? Do they hand out light
non-deterrent sentences. So what is, for the lawyers will say, what are you seeking to cure? If of course the laws are there, if there's a complainant, they will know where to run to the police and say this one did A, B, C, D, and the police will come in, investigate, and do the needful.
Yeah.
The other thing I don't know, maybe my friend, is a personal friend by the way, Waiswa, he will pick his calls all the time. He's one of those people who wield a lot of power and influence that remain extremely accessible, I must say. I don't know whether now UCC has constituted a tribunal that will look into our things hard, and there's fair hearing in this. That is also very key in handing out regulation of this sector, because it should not be regulation, it should be regulation and not control, yeah? That if I am speaking and you're not interested, you want to control me, yeah? You're not regulating me, you're not creating an environment for me to be able to speak, to express myself, even when it may not please you, but I'm not trading on any criminality, I'm allowed,
right.
Yeah?
Where do you draw the line between regulation and control? Again, it seems a bit murky to me in terms of this whole freedom of expression. You have, again, if you go online now and see some of the things that people say, because I think they are hiding under the shield of invisibility or being on social media, people will come and say, Robert Sempala guy, or a guy MC as well, in fact I know, like, complete utter falsehoods, right? Yeah. Even if you go and get a retraction from this person, the damage from that is very difficult to undo. And yes, I'm saying for the record that saying that Mr. Sempala's MC is completely wrong, even if he is, like why would you be, where do you draw that boundary to say that people are allowed to say what they want, but then they must be held accountable for what they say? And how do you regulate that? Especially now in the advent of social media, we've been hearing about citizen journalism. We're going into an election period, Julius will tell you, where if a guy is running for election in Kashari, all I have to do is go and put out a WhatsApp video that just says enough bad things about him to cause enough reasonable doubt.
Thank you very much. It's true, the distinction between regulation and control is historical and it's still ongoing. But precisely, regulation is about setting frameworks, guiding on the do's and don'ts, and then allowing the other person to play within the rules. That's what regulation is all about. Now, UCC, in accordance with international benchmarks, we have rules, and these rules are derived from the Act, the Uganda Communications Act, of course the Constitution, the regulations, we give guidelines, we give standards, all these, we give license terms and conditions. All these documents tell our operators and the industry what they should do and what they shouldn't do. We don't sit with them every day to say, before you go on air, come and we quality assure your script. We tell them, for example, if you're a TV or radio, we ensure that when you're reporting news, the story is factual. The story is balanced. Don't be partisan. You know, in Uganda, many people tend to confuse our framework here with what happens in the US. And let me just talk about this here, because there's been a discussion about US and media and all that. In the US, their legal regime allows media to be partisan. A media house can come out and say, for me, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, and they will carry stories just propagating their candidate. And it will be official that Fox News is for this, CNN is for this, it is okay for them. Now, most common law countries, UK and Uganda, most countries that were previously colonized by the British, we took the approach of media being independent, being non-partisan. And that's why the BBC in the UK, even when we know it's government-owned, they will not promote Labour Party against the Liberal Democrat. they will remain neutral. Come to Uganda, even UBC, a government TV, the rules require UBC to be non-partisan. You remember of a case where even Vesige sued UBC in court, and the court ordered UBC to compensate Vesige because they had been denied some time on UBC. Go to any TV, regardless of your political affiliation, they are supposed to allow you a platform to express your views, because when we are licensing these TVs and radios, we tell them be non-partisan. Yeah. Now, controlling
so before you leave that point, I'm sure you hear a lot of murmuring in this room around that issue. The keyword being supposed.
Yes.
So what do you then do where Jana Juang, who has her small radio station somewhere in Kotido, Butaleja, suddenly says, don't host Ben?
Okay. We've actually had so many cases, people complaining that I went to some radio station, I ordered for time, and they denied because of my political affiliations. Right. We've told many of them, in fact, our license terms and conditions and the law, very clear, you are non-partisan. We are giving this, we're not even licensing individuals. We license the company.
It's an entity.
The entity, not that director or manager, no, it's the entity. And I challenge anybody here, if you belong to any political party or any group, if you go to any media house and they deny you access to that media on the basis of your political affiliation, please come to UCC and complain. We shall be very happy to investigate the matter and take action. That is very clear. We've made it very clear to all media owners and journalists that be balanced, give everybody a fair time. Of course, there are times when security, for one reason or another, they might deny a candidate or somebody from appearing on the radio. Now that becomes another issue. Security can investigate their matters, they can they can regard anybody as suspect, they can do many things in accordance with that law. But for us as a regulator of the communication sector, we tell you, anybody, irrespective of your political party, you have the liberty to appear on any radio and TV in Uganda and express your views. Then it is for the voters to choose whoever they will choose. And I'm sure Julius will confirm that even under the electoral laws, that is emphasized. Yeah. We even have a whole about 3 regulations in these content regulations that talk about political advertisement and what the media how the media should behave during electoral times. For example, according every candidate time to appear on the platform, but also allowing people to advertise. The only thing that we say in the regulations, that if you run a political advert on behalf of a political party, let it be known that it's an advert. So do not sugarcoat the message to be your own message or a news story, but when it's such an advert. And I think you've seen many TVs and radios clearly saying, this message is from the office of this political party. Yeah. That is intended to inform you, the audience, that this may be biased towards favoring a political party. But also we say, give all political parties a chance to run those adverts. Now, if one political party has money to run adverts on any BS or any TV or any other TV, and another doesn't have money, it won't happen for free, because these are people's businesses. As UCC, we cannot direct operators to carry your political messages for free, because there's somebody paying for that electricity, there's somebody who opened up that business for money. So we cannot also be seen to undermine the progress of our operators.
Yeah, very so. Mr. Sempala, there's the whole issue then here again about from what Abdul Salam is saying, that look, many times the public seems to bundle UCC with other government entities. Someone has said, you can't appear on my radio station. UCC says that's illegal and gives a directive and says you must be able to host that person. And then they get picked up by security, and yet we still, in many cases, end up blaming the Communications Commission. The issue of access to media and being able to accord airtime in particular to different parties. How do you think we can help your compatriots, journalists, to be a bit more objective in what they do? Because again, while there are guidelines from UCC, there are many times when you will see a story that is supposed to be objective in the news or whatever, and you just get the sense maybe that the person who was doing the story was leaning in a particular direction, which is why we were being told earlier on where you have certain parties saying that journalist can't cover our things. What do we do about that? Because that clearly shows that there's already a big problem in that area.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Doctor said if a campaign is run by maybe a political party, the media house should indicate that this is a sponsored message from this political party. And I'm sure the same would apply to certain news stories which are run and are not balanced at all in certain media houses. You look at a story, for instance, it covers one person, it covers another one from the same political party, it covers, and you look at about 5 stories following each other. And I think UCC should be extremely concerned that these people don't even indicate that this is like, much as it's coming out as news, it is like a sponsored advert, for a politician. And that raises concern because it only comes from, say, the ruling party, for instance, and not for any of the other political actors. That should concern UCC very much. But there are times when UCC's hands are very tied, and you will bear with them, especially if a media house that is owned by a politician who is aligned to a ruling party, for instance, declines to give space to another person from another party. UCC cannot enforce it, even when they try. I know for a fact. Because the discretion of allowing a person in the studios is for the media house and its management. So there, I bear with UCC.
The discretion to allow advertising on my radio is mine. I can say I don't want your money, right?
Certainly, I can say we have a lot of adverts.
We have no space.
We don't have space to carry yours. But also, the times when these media houses go overboard. They do not host you, but they go ahead to attack you if you're a political party, for instance, or your personality. And I'm sure UCC should be very concerned that if I am not around, for fairness in the media, you're supposed to seek out both parties to the story. And that is fairness, that's objectivity, and that's true balance. Yeah. But in here, we're talking about, for instance, Akime, headed by Dr. Logalambi. Doctor is not in the studios, and the moderator will allow everyone in the studios to comment about Akime, and Akime is not represented. I don't want to risk advocating for political party. That's why I'm using one of our development actors and in the room, and who is my friend. So I do not know how UCC is able to strike a balance, saying, why are you doing this? Must I come out to complain to UCC? Or is UCC being proactively picking up these issues to say, okay, this is counterproductive to progressive communication regulation and management, so we are concerned? Because these are things that come through, including reportage of stories. We are a media rights organization, and we know one or other, some journalists who come to us. Yeah. And you say, but I was speaking and you're not recording me. What happened? And this person is having their camera arrested. Says, that one can't pass at our station. You know, eh? You balance your thing, eh? So we can carry you. And this person will not record you until you stand on the side to say, okay, they ask a specific question. What do you say about this? And that would run so well. I'm sure that is a delicate balance for UCC to strike. And there are times when we must not even bother them, especially given the pattern of ownership of media houses in Uganda. Most of the owners are politicians, if not business people. And those are already confessed to supporting the political activities of the day, of given camps. So UCC and WISO are here, even when it is embedded so well in the guidelines, they will not be evoked to say, please host Sempala on the days requesting for the show on Tuesday at 2 p.m. We want him in there. We requested one time for a show from one of the national broadcasters. And the person manning the broadcaster told me, no, Robert, wait, because we are going into elections. You might come and say things and things may not go well with my boss. And said, okay, I can wait. I waited 1 year, 2 years. We waited 2 elections and finished. Said, now he said I can come. Said, they have not sworn in the president. You wait a bit. So I was waiting. I waited forever, and she never got back.
And then the next election started, so you ended up going.
Yes. So I wouldn't report to Waiswa and UCC in particular, because I knew it was too hard for them to enforce by appearance there. Yeah. Maybe they would have documented it as a case of selective application of a public broadcaster, but they would not have forced me into the studios. And where we've gotten most problems is when most of these public medias or private ones host politicians. Yeah. And then security overlaps the work of UCC. They come storm the media houses, throw out the person who was invited or was paid for space, and UCC goes mysteriously silent, as though that is right.
So, but what are they supposed to do?
This is what is telling us that everyone is entitled.
Right, and they have made that very clear. So you want them to arrest the police because how?
No, to come out and raise a red card. That's what the referee does.
But how is that any of their business? Because they're no longer a referee in this particular case, right?
We've done it. We've done it on
a red card must come out.
Right.
Oh, a warning, yellow card. If you repeat the same, a red card you march off. So that is.
But hold on, Robert. So the thing is this. I have a radio station.
Yes.
I've invited Jan to come, right? The police has come and said no. How does Abdul Salam then give me a warning for not hosting Jan when I was ready and she was stopped at the gate?
Because his custodial authority is to ensure that the license is used appropriately as per the guidelines that host, irrespective of what the people think politically, economically, and everything.
Which I'm trying to do.
So if my guest is in the studios, you come and ransack my station and pull out a guest, I would expect flying headlines from UCC, trying to take action to call to order this person. And that will be different from how one does it. For instance, these guys called the foot soldiers. They normally are given assignments and they attack you right, left, and center. One time I was building their capacities in terms of observing the ethical requirements of communications. And one guy came and said, Mr. Sepala, thank you, you've been very elaborate and I've understood. But now, I came out to oppose the person in that White House. I want him out. And you are telling me I must balance my piece before it goes on live. How can I go to him to ask if he will allow to go or not? So how would you help me? And my answer was very clear. Ignorance of the law is no defense. Right. You know what to do, and you know what awaits you in case you do not comply. If you're not ready to comply, you're in the wrong business.
Actually, I have a question about that, but even before I do, one more question for each of you, and then we'll open it up briefly before we go into the next panel. When Dr. Emid was talking earlier, Council, she talked a little bit about the issue of media literacy to make sure that we are addressing the lack of understanding of what media is supposed to do, and the fact that nowadays everyone considers themselves a journalist without understanding the ramifications of what it is. An accident has happened, the bus has overturned, and you have people who are going and taking videos of people who are literally still bleeding and then putting that on social media. What do we do for things like that? Because, again, does that fall under your purview? How do we deal with this issue of people who will use social media for all manner of irresponsible?
Yes. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You know, the media landscape in Uganda is threatened by many factors. One of them is unprofessionalism by the people playing a role in the industry. We've spoken here before that for me, in my assessment, and this is me, one of the biggest problems of delivering this sector is because as media players, we've agreed to onboard everybody to be part of us. And we defend them as part of us. So, for example, if UCC or government body takes action against somebody who pretends to be a journalist and does something that is totally out of order for any journalist, I've not seen any media rights association coming in to condemn the other person for trying to behave like a journalist when they are not. Many times when we sit and we say, okay, one of the ways through which we can improve professionalism is by requiring people to have some minimum qualifications before they can work as journalists. Most times that conversation ends up appearing like we are trying to restrict people from enjoying freedom of expression. But I tell you, there are so many studies that have been written by different experts from across the world that one of the practical steps through which you can improve the quality of media practice is by deliberately limiting and imposing some conditions before somebody can merit appearing as a journalist on radio or TV or even some of these authorized platforms like the TVs. Because, ladies and gentlemen, there are certain people we watch on radio, on TV or listen to on radio, and even yourself you say, did this person step in any school to learn even the fundamentals of humanity? Now that is a problem. Yeah. So for you, I know many of you are journalists in this room. If you love journalism and you recognize it as a profession, you must move away from shying from the reality that not everybody should be allowed to climb the badge of being a journalist. You should be proud to say that for you to be a journalist, you must have met certain minimum standards. If you made Dr. Garamba here a host of a show, there are certain things that by virtue of his training, he can never say. Because as a journalist, he knows I can't go beyond this. I gave an example outside to a group I can share with you. There was a complaint we were dealing with about one of the banks in this country. It had dismissed about 4 of its executives because of fraud. And those executives went and paid some group of online writers. And they began writing stories, telling the world how this bank is going to close. People should go and withdraw all their money. The bank is fraudulent. The MD is a thief. They were targeting the bank's brand. But all the stories were totally unfounded. So when the bank complained, we invited all the online platforms that had published the stories. Now, one of them is a platform owned by a senior journalist. And I can mention his name, Andrew Mwenda, the Independent. He came in late after we had started the meeting. Before he came, the young journalists and players were arguing, this is true, we investigated the story, it was balanced, it was okay, but obviously the story was wrong. As a mature, trained journalist, when Andrew Mwenda came, he said, first stop. I've read this story. We are sorry. This was a mistake. My reporter got this story from this source. The source had not done a good job, and my editor didn't do a good job in quality assuring the story. We are very sorry. We are going to delete it, and we will never do this again, and we're even going to write this officially to apologize. That was the end of the conversation. Even the complainant abandoned their claim against the Independent. Why? There was professionalism. As a professional, you will know when you've done a mistake. Yeah. You had Serwanja here telling us how he acted when he recorded a Baby Wine video. Yeah. Now, how many people have that level of conscience? So what we should be the discussion we should be having now is how do we transform whoever we've allowed into our house of journalism to at least understand the fundamentals of our game and stop embarrassing us. Now, this can best be done by all of you. Because when people lose trust in journalism, they're losing trust in you, the professionals, because of the bad apples. For us, as lawyers, we know that we are highly regulated. And as a lawyer, my diary is in that bag. I usually keep my practicing certificate is always in my diary. Because I know that is my entry point whenever I go. Any judge, magistrate can ask me, can I look at your practicing certificate as a lawyer? I have it in my diary. I move with it everywhere. But 2, if I come here and I speak and you recognize me as Abdul Salam, a lawyer, there are certain things I cannot say because I know I'm an advocate of the High Court. And even law counsel can reprimand me for what I say here. I'm not in court. But as an advocate, I must behave in a particular way because I'm an advocate of the High Court. Now, if I make a mistake, the law council and the Uganda Law Society can even disown me and say, that was a mistake by Abdul Salam as a person, not Uganda Law Society. And we condemn it. Now, what I've seen with you, the journalists, even when that person is a Kamnyuf journalist, you say, we are dying with our friend. We can't let our friend go. So when we are blaming you, we blame all of you. And that is the problem. So you must be able to isolate the bad apples from the good, and then work on how you can transform the bad apples to become better through training and improvement.
I think that's a very good point. One of the things that happens a lot, especially in Uganda, is the fact that you have so many media houses. I think at the moment you have licensed 300 and what radio stations at the moment? Yeah. TV stations are in the hundreds as well at the moment. The online publications are countless. So UCC has a requirement for the qualifications for journalists, many of which up to now, I think you and I will both agree, the majority of media houses are not meeting. And I think the challenge comes in usually when one of those people actually screws up or makes a bad mistake. And that's when now UCC comes and says, please, because we've had this situation before where someone has done something, and then council sends a letter saying, can you please give us the qualifications of that person? And that's where you realize quickly, oh, by the way, yeah. So one last question for you, Mr. Sempala, about same thing again. We are going into an election year. One of the challenges that we have, I find, because I get to MC a lot of events, and journalists, and I say journalists in court because they come seconded by media houses, and I'm sure you guys will do press conferences a lot. Julius, I'm sure, will testify to this. A person comes claiming to be a journalist, and then when it's time to do a Q&A, they ask a question, and you're thinking, I'm sorry, did you go to school even? Like they have absolutely no comprehension of the subject and what they're trying to talk about. And so the question coming out of this, Robert, is this. Journalists going into an election year, they are reporting on elections, reporting on these things, and most of the time they have little, if any, knowledge whatsoever of even electoral laws. What do we do to ensure that our journalists are able to acquaint themselves better with our laws so that they can actually help, report a lot better in election season?
Yeah, and that is a very legitimate concern, very legitimate. I have seen it personally when one asks you a question and you're trying to figure out what exactly you want. So sometimes if they speak Luganda, you go to Luganda and say, were you asking for this? And they insist on asking you in English. So sometimes you are not sure whether you've answered their questions or not. And I do not want to say it's because they didn't go to school. There are people who never learn how to ask questions or even speak English. Even when they are doctors, they will know how to treat you so well, but English is not one of their friends. There are people who speak very eloquently before even going to school. So it's a language that we play around with. But for this particular qualification thing, it's prudent that we have standards set for who practices. And that environment is non-existent in Uganda, unfortunately. Because if you go to the Media Council to be accredited, certainly they will require you to be a degree holder according to the Press and Journalists Act. Or if you are from another discipline, you need to have at least a diploma in journalism. Yeah? And you're supposed to have been accredited by NIJU, the National Institute of Journalists in Uganda, which certainly is non-existent, though it has 2 representatives on the council of the media council. It has 2 friends of mine representing it, NIJU, and they sit there. So sometimes we joke around. So you've sat here. Who are you going to report to? Where are your constituents? But they keep sitting there and say, no, we are helping the media. When you're helping the media, you do not have to consider those things of technicalities. But in a nutshell, we were faced with a problem one time when 2 journalists were kicked away from covering Parliament by the speaker, the previous speaker. on grounds that they did not have, qualifications. So there was a case court, and that case said, okay, if you need to empower journalists, give them ample time, because there are many who graduate with diplomas, and they have amassed a lot of skills. Yeah, experience. They have a bottomless wall of experience in doing these things. How are you helping them not to be disenfranchised? Maybe create a span of 5 years. Say after 5 years, everyone in practice without disqualification will not be eligible to practice in this trade. But this one was an instant, it was an ad hoc one, because of personal vendetta. The speaker wanted to throw away some certain 2 people. Now one of them is a minister, they sit together in cabinet. Another reports her in the East African community because he reports there. They are now meeting. And now she realizes they are good journalists after throwing them away. Then when that front died, they said everyone that has amassed an experience of 5 years is not eligible to cover parliament. We said globally, people are looking for experienced practitioners, and you are throwing them away on political grounds. So that, for me, speaks to how hard it has been to professionalize this industry. Because what is the problem having NIJU in place? With all the skilled people in this room, my brother Senoga there, who is a trainer, can man it so well. Then you can man it, and then we have a chain of accrediting journalists complete. And so the Media Council will not be faced with legal hurdles like now it did. Because you remember during elections, there was that requirement that every journalist had to be accredited to cover government events or political campaigns. And there was a court battle, court ruled in our favor and said, in the absence of a key ingredient of that process, journalists cannot be accredited by, and the process was null and void. And I'm sure Council Waiswa here knows it. Our lessons would be, we go back, sit together as media development actors, as a community of practice, and say, how do we get NIJU back on board? What else is needed? And how do we make this a professional industry? Yeah? Because we will stand to benefit all of us if it became professional. Yeah. Maybe my last question to this is, who benefits from a disjointed, disorganized media industry? Does anyone benefit from it? If there is anyone who benefits from it, because if you're disjointed, if you're disorganized, you cannot jointly bargain for your space. Yeah? Because all of you will be pulling in different directions, not in a common direction. If there is any such a person that benefits from it, then it will be very hard to put in place processes that will see the media professionalize. But from the onset, I want to be understood as HRNJ, we want to defend professional journalists. However, we do not want to kill the spirit of citizen journalism. So it is the work of UCC to see how to strike a delicate balance between these two, that they all flourish for the benefit of expression, which is entitled to all humans. Yeah? You have a right because you're human. So how does UCC, how do the professional bodies strike that good balance that will see all of us flourish?
Thank you very much, Robert. So I don't know if there are any questions or additions. Very briefly, we'll take those before we hear from Strong Minds briefly, and then do our last panel. We'll take a mic. Mr. Senoga, I think, has something to add. So okay, we'll just do those 3, and then we'll wrap it up. We have do you have a mic? Was there a second? Okay, you can use mine for now.
Good afternoon. My name is Eliud Kibi from Kenya, formerly with the Radio Africa Group, but currently running Diplo Brief Media. I'd like first to react to the question of journalists not understanding or having proper grip of certain aspects you mentioned about the electoral laws. And I think possibly it's time we consider either one, having journalism as a second qualification, where you have a journalist covering business, possibly having a background in BCom, accounting or finance or something, or a lawyer having someone covering the courts, having a background in legal. Because I'll give an example of, in Kenya, the Standard Group had a medical doctor who was the editor and reporter for health. And I think Mercy Korir did a fantastic job. So I think it's possibly that. Secondly, it would be maybe capacity building journalists based on their specialization. I think now we are beyond having, general news. Now I think we are going to, specialized, coverage. My question would be, how is government here in Uganda possibly using advertisement to control how media, private media is operating? Is there a concern with how government, as one of the biggest advertisers, using that as a tool to, as a stick or a carrot to how media operates in Uganda?
Yeah. Thank you very much. There was, okay, that one, and then at the front. Just to answer your question though, brilliant suggestion around having the specialized people, but I do have an idea of what media in Kenya pays and in Uganda, and it's going to be very difficult to convince a doctor in Uganda to come and be your health editor because you literally can't afford them in this country. The room can correct me if I'm wrong. We just can't be able to afford the pay for journalists in this country is abysmal, to put it mildly.
Thank you, Ben. My name is Irene Abalo. Just to let you know that we have lots of teachers in the newsroom, and the teachers are the ones who are editors. Linda there will tell you the kind of people we have in the newsroom who are from different professions. And so his question perhaps is, if we have people who say have a degree in the teaching profession and advance and do maybe a diploma in journalism, do we then say they are part of us, or we still say you still have a diploma, you don't have a degree? So what does this look like from a legal perspective? I think that's something that we've been looking at in the newsroom. Yeah. Someone has done masters, but it's not related to journalism, and they go and do a postgraduate in a diploma in journalism. So what does that look like? Yeah. Do they now qualify? What is the grading in that aspect legally? Mm. But my question is away from that. The legal regime requires journalists to do things in a particular way. But when you're in the business of journalism in Uganda, especially towards elections, people are going to be in need of equipment, things that concern communication. But they end up with the military as the people concerned with those equipment. So my question to you, sir, if you could help guide, if I want to import a UB van, or I want to import a drone, or I want to import bulletproof jackets, and it is for my journalists to be safe considering the political environment, and I have to interface with other players that are uncomfortable to interact with, how can UCC help those in the communication space get equipment that is meant for communication, not anything related to military? Not anything, okay, we will say that it's related to security, but we're not doing something that is going to be a threat to the country or to other citizens. Yeah. I don't know how that conversation can be pushed forward to make it easy for some of the communication equipment to get into the country. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then right at the back.
Thank you, Ben. Councillor Absalam, this year government launched something, the AI task force, and you happen to be a member in it. Is there a package about controlling journalism, ethical conduct of journalism in the task force as well? Is this launched towards the 2026 general elections? There's something that I need to understand about it, and I haven't heard you talk about it anywhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then to the front. to Mr. Sonoga, and then we'll take some feedback and then wrap that up. Very interesting about the bulletproof jackets, though. How do I know that you're buying it as a journalist and not as a rebel?
Thank you. I'm Jeffrey Sonoga, Uganda Christian University. Mine is Mr. Waiswa and Mr. Sempala. I'm baffled by the interchangeable use of the word media and journalism. Isn't there a distinction between the two? Sometimes the bandwagon may be the problem, where I'm a musician and I'm taken as media, and I'm blamed for the sins of the journalists. And because you just said that we, the lay people, we think you are all lawyers, but then you've just said some are advocates, some are others, and there's a certain regulation for each category. What is it for our case then?
Oh, wow. That's,
Thank you, Ben. The council there said that when one journalist makes a mistake and the commission, UCC, asks that can you avail some papers, that there is a bandwagon defense of the culprit. And if there is any other group, which I believe we don't belong to, is the border people. Borders. Even if one of them knocks you and you stop, all of them will descend on you, judge you, and actually they can even beat you. They take collective defense of the sins of their own. And I think that might be a problem. And it speaks to how do you then professionalize? Yeah. And what are the parameters that one has to observe to exclude? By professionalization, inevitably you must exclude. Yeah. But I think we have not been finding the meeting point on which points to emphasize in excluding those that should belong to what we call the profession of journalists and those who undertake acts of journalism. Yeah. Professor Ruganambi, when he taught me, in fact, he used to teach us a paper called Issues in Mass Comm, and there was a particular segment that he taught us on professionalization. And they used to tell us that sleeping in a garage does not make you a car. And I think we have so many people sleeping in garages of newsrooms. And because they have the identity card of whichever media house, when they go out, they say we are journalists. But practicing acts of journalism does not mean that you are a journalist. Right. And many people are doing acts of journalism. Just like a number of you, you prescribe drugs from your homes. There are doctors, witch doctors, and all that. But you're not a doctor. And we must be able to painfully accept that to move towards professionalization, we'll inevitably have to exclude. And exclusion can be on the basis of qualifications. It can be on the basis of experience. It can be on the basis of literature. It can be the study, what you study in school, in class. Right. So those are discussions that must continue, and I think this is a good beginning point.
Absolutely.
But we should not behave like border people at the stage.
Yeah. Also, we'll take one more. I'll ask my panelists to summarize their responses as we get that. I should tell you about borders. The one thing that I do give them credit for, though, is that when a border guy wants change, he just puts up a note like this, and he always gets change. I find that to be commendable, that they have that solidarity.
Thank you very much, and thank you, our panelists. As a human rights defender, the issue I'm raising in respect to the legal environment, I think I need to sit, otherwise I'm going to get an accident here. The issue of vulnerability. The vulnerabilities in our practice, in our industry, they are at different levels. You have vulnerabilities because of gender, I have told some people something that shocked me some time back, that editors and media owners send women journalists to sleep with potential advertisers to get advertisement. Women journalists, okay? And that is on top of perhaps getting stories from sources in a similar manner. Now, the regulation is supposed to be for facilitating the enjoyment of media rights, for enjoyment of freedom of speech and expression. So, what can we do to have a law that takes into consideration the vulnerabilities? Think about freelance journalists in our environment. Think about journalists who work up country. Think about journalists who work for partisan media owners and they have pressures. So how can we ensure that, I mean, if I pay you money to run a story, I will not trust you. Right. Because I know the next story will be can be about me if you get a higher bidder. So the vulnerabilities in the industry need to be addressed. Yeah. Because the issue of gender, for instance, is taken care of under some other laws. But if I asked Dr. Abdul Salam here, the guidelines that you have for registering, you said it was not registering, for authorizing, do they, for instance, say you must have a balance of gender in your newsroom or whatever, something like that? It is not in your UCC law, it is elsewhere in another law. So do we have the, what is it called, cross-referencing, something like that? Right. How do we address vulnerabilities in the industry?
Thank you. Those people who go to sleep with people for advertising, they are forced what they go for themselves, because
they are told to go and sleep with advertisers so that the media house can get revenue.
But even you can
and
say no.
You say no and eat what?
I don't want to be insensitive, so I'm just yeah, I am aware enough to be very careful about how to respond to those things these days, because I might not have enough understanding of this. Very briefly from each of you, the things that have been raised. We only have, I think, 4.5 minutes before we have to wrap up the session, so no pressure.
Ben. Thank you, Ben, and colleagues, for the questions and the comments. I'll begin with my colleague Rose's last one on gender and vulnerabilities. I would say I'm a father of, I have 2 daughters that I love. And of course, many times, and I have many sisters, but I also love women. Women are my friends. So many times, my yardstick for determining what I should tell a woman to do is whether I would be comfortable if the same is told of my daughter, my wife, my sister. So I would be very surprised that actually what you're telling us is true. That a boss of a media house would tell another person's daughter that go and sleep with that advertiser. Even this girl, woman that they are sending, I would think when you attain the age of 18 as a woman, you learn some fundamentals of survival. You have some red line that you can't cross. So my appeal to the female journalists in this room, there is no story, there is no job worth your name. If the boss, no, this one I must say. It comes back to the values that you also have as a person. If somebody, like the same way we know that some people ask women that for me to give you a job, I need first of all sleep with you. I keep telling women that unfortunately government may not be in every room where men are telling all those things. But as an adult, you have the right to say no to any man or to report rape if what is done onto you. If you can't protect yourself as a woman, it becomes very difficult for other people to protect you. And if there is any particular person, media house, that is doing this, I invite the women that have been subject of that kind of treatment. Please come in confidence. I sit at UCC, 5th floor. Tell me, I'm privileged to know most of the media owners in this country. I know them. Most of them are in my phone book. I call them. So to come, share with me in confidence. We'll see how we'll handle that. If it requires me handling it as a man to man, as a father of daughters, I will do it outside of even the formal structures. Because that is not right, and we must fight it. But my appeal to women, please also have ability to say no to certain things. Do not render yourself to become so vulnerable that everybody should come and say, for you to do this, or this and this will happen. For heaven's sake, it's your body, it's your life. You can say no. And you can report that person to some other authorities, or you can even walk away and go back to the village. May I come from the village, and people in the village are not dead. So many of you are scared of going back to the village. I'll go back to Mayuge and eat cassava, if that is what I have to do to survive. So please, have some benchmarks, ladies. This for yourselves. Now, what is UCC doing? Of course, as a regulator, there is a limit to what we can do. There was a report about 2 years ago. I engaged a team of female activists. They were saying, what has UCC done to ensure that media houses in Uganda are led and managed by women? And then I told her, okay, it's a very important question. But when you give these people licenses, we don't prescribe for them who they should hire, how much they should pay them. At the end of the day, regulation, and we talked about regulation and control. Regulation doesn't involve us going overboard to tell people who they should hire, who they should promote. It's about your competence and your skills. If you can convince that person to promote you to become editor-in-chief, I mean, we are proud of people like Barbara Kaija that have risen all the way to the highest level at New Vision. They are women, professional ladies, very much respected. Now, if others, because of other reasons, they cannot rise through the ranks, then as a regulator, there is a limit to which we can actually push. This would leave it to the industry, for the industry to settle, because for sure, it's slightly outside our primary mandate as a regulator. But of course, to the media owners, whenever you can, pull that woman, that girl, and promote her, please do so, because we all know that women are the foundation of society and the country. On the issue of bandwagon, on the issue of professionalism and bandwagon defense of all people playing as journalists, this, in my view, is a problem. And as an industry, you must have honest conversations about it. For as long as you continue defending whoever is playing a role in your field, and you call them journalists, and you don't want to isolate them for their wrongs, then they will get bolder and bolder, and they will continue exposing all of you to risk. And that relates also to the question that the brother from UCU mentioned. Are we confusing journalism, media practice? Unfortunately, for academic purposes, the terminologies are different. But in practice, they are one and the same. Academically, they are different. But in practice, whoever people see on TV or radio qualified becomes a journalist. And that's why I've seen some countries saying that a person shall be recognized as a journalist by what? By their conduct, by their work, irrespective of their qualification. So if you work for a TV, you're a news anchor, you are already a journalist by virtue of what you're doing. Yeah. And we subject to the same rules as other people. As UCC, we don't insist on qualifications for everybody. But the law requires that every media house must have a producer and a head of news. And these must be registered with the Media Council. Now, the Media Council follows the Press and Journalist Act, which says that you must either have a degree in journalism or a degree in another field and a diploma in journalism. That is the threshold they currently use, because that is what is anchored in the Press and Journalist Act of 1995. So to my sister who mentioned that there are people who have other degrees and have added on postgraduate diplomas, those are journalists, ideally. If what they do is journalistic in nature. But generally speaking, in Uganda at the moment, everybody, a comedian, a teacher, a doctor who works on radio is regarded as a journalist. Yeah. And that is where I want you to have conversations as an industry to change and redefine it, to exclude the bad apples and set minimums. You may not say a degree, but you might say, for example, that for you to be called a journalist and to be employed on air or as a reporter, you must have gone to a media training academy, a recognized one, and studied for at least maybe 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, so that you get the fundamentals of the field in which you are entering. In my view, that would be very helpful in professionalizing your industry. Yep. I think I'll stop. Maybe
because I wanted to add Robert to also just wrap up very briefly, and then
maybe let me just conclude with the one of importation of protective gear, bulletproofs, any other equipment that is military in nature. The law is that you must get clearance from Ministry of Security and Internal Affairs. So as a media entity, requesting that you are importing bulletproof, they will require you to give justification. If you're importing a drone, the rules require you to get approval from Civil Aviation Authority, because as you know, drones can potentially disorganize aviation operations, so Civil Aviation Authority and security. As UCC, we are happy to recommend you and say, look, this entity is licensed by UCC to provide communication services, accord them any support. And if you can justify having those gears, I'm sure you will be supported to have them.
Sounds good. Robert?
Thank you very much.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I will dwell so much on roses. Sorry that UCC is running away from it, but I would think that as a licensing body for the practice of communication, media houses to be in particular, it should be a stringent condition, on renewal of a permit of every practitioner, every owner of a media house, to respect the rights of women. And there should be a desk, if anything, that women can come to, the female practitioners, in confidence, and these issues can be handled. Because many run to nowhere, because they fear being embarrassed. They run to reporting to people who won't help. But if this is already entrenched gets entrenched within the UCC systems, I'm sure many will come to you and report. Finally, about media and journalism, the interchange is about how we say a violation, an abuse. They are legally different, but we use them interchangeably. But the media refers to all those platforms that are used to communicate. Media platforms. But then journalism is just about the professional application of journalism. I think we can draw a line and shouldn't be a threat to our trade. But in a nutshell, Ben, I think we need to work a lot of talk. The UCC here present should listen more to the end users of these services than going to impose, and there will be a lot of compliance if it comes from engagement of the practitioners in here. They will all comply, and you literally will have no people to try. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and a big thank you to our panel, a big thank you to Robert and to Abdul Salam Mwaiswa. I'll allow them to step down as we do our next panel. So we have two more sessions to go. With your permission, I wanted to ask that you allow me to switch them, if that's okay, because the conversation around mental health and the workplace is one that I think we can be able to lead into our evening, even as we wrap up, so we can actually continue the conversation from there, if that's okay. And then, so we can have the one about beyond the ballot and strengthening women in and youth voices in the elections. There's something I wanted to say. I was scared it was going to be very insensitive, so I don't have many filters. So don't judge me if okay, but I'm going to say it anyway. I once worked in a newsroom where at some point I think all the female reporters had children with politicians. No, true story. And so sometimes some of these things I think, I don't know, is it a thing of people taking advantage of others because they were maybe young and naive and saw an opportunity? How do you? I stopped, Rachel. I stopped. Okay. I see. I was just. I didn't know how to approach that, so I will shut up. Please welcome with me Miriam Akera from Girl Up Initiative to come and join me on the platform. Rachel, you need to guide me on. I need to learn when. I will look for you after. Isaac Arenitwe, who is from Restless Development, is also joining us on this panel. And then we'll also have Joseph Akiso from Etop Radio. I have Betty Mujungu from Voice of Toro. And finally, Julius Mchunguzi, of course, who's been with us the entire morning. And we are privileged that he's killed his day for us to come and shed some light on this. I would give you my chair. I'm going to move, so you guys can be able to have a wonderful conversation. They'll bring my podium back, and I can use that. Right. So the conversation we wanted to have here again, if you think about what's happening with women and youth voices in elections, we always see a challenge, especially when elections happen in Uganda, around women and youth and how they get marginalized. We know that there are systemic barriers to what happens. We want to now examine the role that the media can play in being able to ensure we can do something about this. And what strategies can we employ to be able to engage our youth and women in political discourse and do it meaningfully as well? And each of you, of course, very well placed to speak into this. So I think if I could maybe start the conversation by bringing Miriam into this. From your perspective, what would you say would be the biggest issue and concern, right, facing young people and women, especially around the elections? If you are asked to pick that one thing that you see is the biggest sore point, what would you say that would be? You can, whichever is comfortable for you. I think you want to use the handheld one. It's definitely clearer. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Miriam Akera, as has already been mentioned. I'm from Girl Up Initiative, Uganda. Pleasure being here. Pleasure having a panel that is discussing issues of women and youth. Very pertinent. Thank you so much for including us in the Media Week. We appreciate that. We need more of these discussions around youth and women issues. So to answer your question, very many issues. I don't know what to point out and what to leave out, but in the context of elections, in the context of our discussions, representation of women. Representation of women in the political space is an issue that has really come up. We know that currently 34% of women, women and youth, combined women and youth, is the representation we have in parliament. That is food for thought. Is that what we desire? Is that what we want for this country, given that 51% of this country consists of women, according to UBO's latest report? That means we are going into an election period with 51% of women as part of our population and 72% of the electorate being youth, young people below 30 years. Ideally, this country is a country of young people. It's a country of women. So there are still issues of representation big issues of representation in the political spaces, and we need the media. We need a lot of support from the media to help us, dive. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, have we made progress though? Because, I mean, statistics might be low, but has there been improvements so far? Are we going in the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely. Thankfully, we are making some progress, but we are not yet there.
At least we are.
Yeah.
We are not going backwards.
Yeah.
We are looking to add a little bit, so that's very important. Isaac, the issue around spaces for young people to be heard. One of the things that you hear quite a lot is how the country is run by grandfathers who call themselves as such and call us grandchildren and don't seem to be interested in hearing anything that young people like to say. I used to consider myself a young person. I'm now 45 and now I am considered to be a grandfather almost. I almost have, so, Julius is gray like me, and yet even he also will probably not have, maybe as much opportunity. What do we do to create a bit more space for the 72% that Miriam is talking about? Clearly we're a young country, and yet you get the feeling, maybe I'm wrong, that our young people are not being given an opportunity to be listened to, especially around issues to do with governance. I should be on.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think when it comes to, one of the biggest challenges we are having for now is the aspect of meaningful youth engagement, Most times we see the leaders that are engaging young people are really engaging them in a tokenistic way. Yeah, so as we look for elections, for example, pre-elections, leaders are just thinking about, what would the young people want us to do? And they're trying to share ideas that they would want to do for the young people, but minus meaningfully engaging young people to know, what their aspirations are, and when we talk about meaningful engagement, we are talking about, engaging young people and appreciating them as equal members within the same space, And that's a gap that we still have, and we really need to act upon that gap, because when we actually do that, we'll be able to, together with them, identify the strategic spaces, what the young people actually think is a strategic space for them to engage, to engage with you. And then through that, you'll be able to realize better outcomes. But in terms of the spaces, I think beyond the elections, I think it is very important to ensure that the media that we have here thinks of creating spaces for young people. And in the interactions with the young people, because on a day-to-day basis we interact with the young people, one of the key ways, I was also looking at some of this report, we're seeing that the young people who are within the urban spaces easily access the media, social media. So social media is their space. But then what we need now is to ensure that in that space, the journalists that we have around here, help us create meaningful engagement with the young people in those spaces. And it is through those meaningful interactions that we are going to be able to provide an opportunity for them to directly engage with their leaders. Because as I talked earlier, the engagement between the elected leaders and the young people, in most cases, is in a tokenistic way. You just want to bring young people to this space, and you can take photos and say, I met with a lot of young people. But in that space, what were the contributions of young people? And the ideas they shared with you, their aspirations, the challenges they face around unemployment and education. To what extent are you taking into those recommendations and implementing them the way the young people have given them to you? That is something that is missing. So with the media that we have around here, I think you can play a critical role in creating those special spaces for young people. The social media spaces are there. Young people are very passionate about them. Bring those leaders to those spaces and let them have an interaction with the young people. And then let's follow up on actions to ensure that the issues that they are presented are being addressed. Thank you.
So now the question I have then for Etopan, for Betty and for Joe would be in terms of, because you guys have been in the field and you're active, what you've been doing to make sure that you're engaging with the young people in your different areas, because you have Teso and Toro and what you're doing there. But even as you mull over that question to give us some feedback and insights from your experiences in the field, let me bring Julius in for a moment, because again, we're talking about young people and women, two very special interest groups. We have, if I'm not mistaken, I think 1.2 million people that turn 18 every year in this country. And you'll notice that over the last maybe 15, 20 years, more and more young people don't have any interest whatsoever in our politics. They seem to be so far, apathetic towards what happens, because they seem to have been given the impression that they don't matter. What is the Electoral Commission doing to try and make sure that we have enough civic engagement, not only for young people, but also for women, again, who for the longest time have been marginalized and have been told that their opinion does not matter? You vote what your husband tells you. These are stories we hear every election cycle. Mwami Chakova. I think that was the famous thing that, if I'm not mistaken, that actually became popular because of an election at some point, right? What's the Electoral Commission doing to try and make sure that we have enough engagement actually with our young people and women to be actively involved in the electoral process in Uganda? Yeah, I'm starting with you, and then we'll come to Joseph and Betty.
Thank you very much. First of all, there is a book called The Constitution, which we encourage all of us to read. And Rosemary Kemijisha there from the Uganda Human Rights Commission, they do a good job. We need to do more to get Ugandans understand and read the Constitution, because it is the basis upon which a number of the things that we are doing, including inclusion and participation of all groups, but in particular, youth and women. The framers of the 1995 Constitution were aware of our history, and they knew that there has been marginalization of various categories of people. And they created affirmative action provisions for women, for youth, for persons with disability, for now the elderly, but now we're talking about women and youth. And Article 1 of the Constitution says that all power belongs to the people of Uganda, and then subsection 4 speaks to that the people will choose the leaders through a fair and free, credible election, and Article 59 speaks to the right to vote for anybody who is above 18 and is a citizen of Uganda. The Electoral Commission, first the Constitution provides for those various affirmative action spaces within which youth and women should participate. The media has a role, the journalists have a role of educating and informing and mobilizing young people and women to actually understand and appreciate those spaces that are available and participate in them. And for the Electoral Commission, our job is to conduct elections. And we conduct elections at all levels. There are levels of the Youth Council, youth leadership, from the local level to the national level. There are women leadership levels from the village to the national level. But the media has deliberately, I hope not deliberately though, decided that when it is an electoral period, to reduce the narrative of what is at stake or what is on the table to a member of parliament, maybe LC5 chairperson,
and then they want to sit at plot 1. And we don't pay sufficient attention to educating the citizens about these other levels of representation and these other levels of governance. Because at the end of the day, the people that change or make differences in the lives of the people are at the local government, at the sub-county. The budgets from central government go to local governments. But to what extent is the media paying attention to issues at local government level and local government elections? So we hope we can work with the media to tell a holistic story, to tell a complete story that speaks to our governance and leadership levels, starting from the local government to the national level, but also highlighting those spaces where young people are expected and women are expected to participate. Yeah. So that's the first point. The second point is the nature of our politics and our elections. You know that our elections are very, 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 very highly emotive, very expensive, and highly, you know, people sell their entire belongings, all their investments to contest even for LOC 5 or even for the local government level. But it is even worse when we talk about parliament and the presidency. Now, people who have sold all they saved to participate in an election, they are prepared to do anything and everything in order to participate and also to win. And that includes deploying violence, deploying disinformation, misinformation, and fake news. And there are categories of people who fear violence, women especially. They will say, we don't want violence scares voters. Violence scares participation. And that's why one of the things we have and we're grappling with and we're calling upon the media to speak against is violence in our elections. Because violence scares, reduces the level of participation, scares certain groups of people, especially women, and then the politicians mobilize young people because of the energy that they have to be the conveyors and cannon fodder for perpetuating violence, because they can abuse, they can use social media to spew hate crimes, and they can be used to beat physical beating, like the one of parliament, of the other candidates or the other supporters. But the media can and should play a role of saying, number one, that an election is not a war, that it should not be a do-or-die affair, and when you lose today, you may win tomorrow, but even if you lose, the end of the world does not come. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, which is why I'm very excited that we have Joe and Betty here, because, again, from where they are, when you think about elections in Uganda, the gist of what Uganda is usually will be at the grassroots level, as you have mentioned, and I think the most vulnerable people as youth and women, again, especially in what you would say would be the rural area. So it would be good to hear from both of you, your perspective. You've been covering elections for a very long time. What has that been like for you, seeing the engagement for youth and women? Has it gotten better? Has it gotten worse? What are some of the things that you think can be done better? But also, especially from the context of what we're doing as the media, what do you think we can do differently to make sure that we are engaging our young people and our women better? So we'll start with you, Betty, and then we'll go to Joe.
Thank you, Ben, and Media Focus on Africa and the other partners for always inviting us. For us, we always come with a local perspective, local content of what happens in the media usually. Thank you for inviting us all the time. It is true that as agenda setters, the media as agenda setters in our community, at the moment, it's really work in progress in terms of engaging both youth and women in electoral processes. Before I even say what we are trying to do as the media and what all the other journalists can do in their spaces, there's a time when and I'll say this because Mr. Julius is here, there's a time when we questioned why the Electoral Commission, usually if you look at their educational, information and education materials, you realize that there are more men speaking if there are pictures that are drawn. Usually it is the men on the podiums speaking at a rally. They've not been able to completely think about the women in terms of those small communications. They really matter. Because if you walk to a community hall where information, or where people in that community specifically get information, and you find on the walls, it is Electoral Commission communicating through photos and these other illustrations, but it is only the men speaking, and they're not able to differentiate that these are youth, that they can also speak or participate. Today, actually yesterday when I was coming, we passed at, I don't know many of the streets or the names, but it is Ginger Road, yes? You said it's Ginger Road. Where former Electoral Commission used to be. If you look at the messages that are open there on the walls, it is a man casting a ballot. This is the man. And in that same picture, there's no woman on the side probably also casting a ballot. So Electoral Commission really does have a lot to play in terms of communication, even when the media has as well a lot of work to do in terms of mobilizing women. Like Mr. Julius said, there are spaces that where are free. I mean, from LC1, there are councils from LC1, from the village level. They have budgets. Okay, at LC1 they may not have a lot of budgets, but there is LC2, there are sub-counties, there are divisions, there are districts, there are representatives in those councils, and those are spaces where service delivery begins in terms of planning. But how much do we as the media consider looking into those spaces? How are women being represented in these community meetings? We've been to community meetings where women, I mean, the whole meeting, the men are speaking, the women are there for purposes of being there, because usually we don't want, governments don't want to have meetings where there are no women. So the women will come into the meetings for purposes of numbers, and then the men will speak and decide on what happens. And it's not because the women have been stopped to speak, but because, I normally want to say that because the level of not being considerate on what the women have to say is just high. But as the media, there's a lot that we can do. For example, at my workplace at Voice of Toro, we have a specific gender desk that is very intentional about women, youth, and people with disabilities. And I know when I say gender, I'll say even men, yes. But we are saying men already have a lot of space. They already have a lot of spaces where they speak. So we are intentional that women are gathered in community meetings, have their voices heard specifically on issues that concern them, on public service delivery, on what they want. We go into elections where if you asked women, even in my own community, if you asked women what they expect out of a leadership or their leader, it is not a lot. It is not a lot that they expect, because probably they were not part even, they did not get chance to participate. Even us, the journalists, are not holding the leaders that accountable in terms of what they are doing specifically to address issues or needs of women and the youth. Yeah. So as journalists, I think that we need to be more intentional on how we program specifically, on how much topics or issues that we address that concern women and the youth. There are panels that sit, there are radio programs, TV shows, where it's only the men on the show, I mean. And I mean, it's business as usual. They are men and they have no problem with not having women on the panel. They are not having a problem with having youth represented. So I think that as a media, we just need to be more intentional on how much content or how much we support the women to be heard specifically.
Thank you very much. In Julius's defense, I should point out that those things that you said, the Electoral Commission, was before he came. So he's already planned to fix everything. In fact, all the new communication material you see from the Electoral Commission will be completely balanced. So, yeah, go ahead, Joe. But I'm sure even if he hadn't thought about it, again, Craig, it's one of those things that you don't pay attention to until it's raised and you're thinking, oh, actually, that's a very good point. So at bare minimum, he has taken note. So he cannot have any excuses after this.
Thank you very much. The election period is usually a very fertile period for any media house. If you've made losses across the 4 years, you're expected to make huge revenue or returns in order to cover, the previous 4 years that you'd have lost. So just like the previous conversations, this becomes a challenge to media houses in terms of invitations. You stop thinking about representation, but you look at every invitation vis-a-vis how much money is coming in. However, as institutions or as ETOP, which would be interested or being very deliberate in making sure that women's voices and men's voices or the youth are heard in their platforms, we normally try to play some balance. Our research indicates that there are very few youth voices on the radio or on the platforms, especially during the electoral period, because they have a very weak financial muscle. But media houses can be deliberate and take the conversations to the community, have the discussions with the youth right in their places, meet the women in their communities, have the conversations in the Lukiko halls, meet them at the areas of convenience like churches, and then, when you have that conversation right at their areas of comfort, it becomes a bit very cheap, even in terms of the cost of reaching those voices onto the media platforms. The other thing which I believe which needs to be done is the media can try as much as possible to using the psychological seductive method to entice the women and the youth to come onto the platforms. Most times, talk shows happen at about 7 to 9 o'clock, and it's called peak time. That's a time when you're not able to have the women come onto the radio and engage in the conversations. But if you must be deliberate, it means that you must do a baseline survey, find out what time are women able to listen, what time are the youth available to have the engagement done, and then you can be able to, to structure your talk shows within that time. Now that means that you'll have the capacity and the opportunity to have more conversations in a very deliberate way for the women and the men. And then just to stop it there is, normally women and the youth ask, what is there in the media for me? So the media institutions have to be very deliberate to provide the content, to provide the issues in line with elections, which can then be able to attract the youth and the women to take part in the conversations. But if a woman every day tunes onto your radio station, looks into your social media handles, checks onto your television and doesn't seem to see anything which speaks to them, which speaks to their issues, then I'm very sure they will lose interest. Women want to see women discussing women issues. The youth want to see fellow youth discussing their issues, because then they believe that they speak from the heart. So we must be very deliberate in making sure that there has to be a correlation on the issues that are being discussed on the media with those ones who are listening. And just like someone said, media should stop speaking to women, but bring women into a table of conversation. Bring the youth into the table of conversation. When they get into that space of conversation, like someone said in the morning, there are no titles. We are discussing issues with due respect, and I'm sure that will be able to encourage the participation of both the women and the youth during the electoral seasons. Thanks.
Thank you very much. For Isaac and Miriam, again, so if you talk about the media, again, and amplifying voices for youth and women around the election time, do you think maybe there is need and room for media to begin to interrogate what the different players in the electoral process are doing deliberately for women and youth? Because again, a lot of our elections don't focus too much on issues. We have problems around that. Do you think maybe if the media did that and began to say, look, Isaac is running for MP, we haven't had him say anything about what he's going to do for women or youth, do you think that that would make a difference in terms of where, you know, women and youth are given an opportunity to then be heard for the both of you?
Thank you again. Thank you. Absolutely. The need is there. However, the media, I believe, needs to be capacitated, needs to be helped, needs to be supported to appreciate these issues even before they begin to interrogate them. You know, we need to help them appreciate issues of gender and issues of youth so that they have that eye and that angle in their work. So when they come with that eye and that angle, then they're able to better interrogate, like the word you use is interrogate. They are better to, you know, track and interrogate and see and report well on what is going on. So we need one to ensure that they understand the issues even before they are doing already what they are meant to do to help deal with those issues. We also need to have youth and female representation in terms of the journalists, those participating and doing the work, you know. Are there some young people out there talking and speaking about these issues from the journalistic areas and field? And it's even easier for them to speak to their fellow young people. If there's a youth journalist out there, they can relate better, you know. Is there a woman, a female journalist that can relate with the issues of women? Yes, I think that would help. That would help, but very important that this eye and angle is really taken into account by men, women, youth, whatsoever journalist you are, that you interrogate. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think youth have issues, and they want to see these issues being addressed and discussed by their leaders. And the media plays a real critical role in like really providing an opportunity for these issues to be heard and seen. So, like what I can say, in the previous elections, I think the young people mobilized themselves. They developed what they called the National Youth Manifesto. So they had interacted with fellow young people, fellow youth from the grassroots. So the National Youth Manifesto had issues for the youth in the urban centers, for the youth in the rural communities. Now, the major challenge that was there was around how do we ensure that the leaders have information on the real issues, on the real priorities of the young people. And I think this is where the media plays a critical role, because for you to be able to really enable young people strategically, meaningfully engage with their leaders, it's good that you have information on their issues. So one of the ways that the media can do this is by doing really sort of a research, you know, on what are the aspirations of the young people. And I see the media has this. You find the media has some like counterparts in the rural communities who really act as collaborators. So it becomes now a good opportunity. And I would want to urge the media to ensure that in this upcoming election, for example, liaise with civil society organizations that are working and supporting young people to come up with their national youth manifestos, have information about this youth manifesto, and then create spaces to ensure that this youth manifesto is discussed within your communities. So for those who have their correspondents in the rural communities, because as our colleague mentioned, earlier on had talked about social media as a key space that can provide engagements with young people. But then in the rural communities, we have challenges with this, with internet, of course, access to internet, the quality of the phones that the young people in the rural communities have. So the best channel for these young people to access information, and young people and women, by the way, is through the barazas, is through the community meetings, is through the town hall meetings at the sub-county levels. So the media personnel that we have in the room, the media now has really a critical role now to help in taking this information closer to be discussed with leaders that, for example, leaders that are standing for electoral processes, so that this information can reach them. And then I think the major challenge that usually comes is now after the elections, it becomes very difficult for young people to approach the leaders and hold them on their commitments, because during elections they are able to commit to addressing some of the concerns. So post the elections, we want to request the media, and I believe the media plays a critical role in doing that. They can bring this information, take information back at the grassroots, bring the leaders in the room together with the young people, and then provide an opportunity for the young people to hold them accountable, to have feedback on what is being done around addressing the issues that affect them. And I think that is one of the major challenges that we have, because we even have many programs that actually government has for the young people, the parish development model and so forth. But at the development stage, and I'm saying that because I've been encouraging young people to participate in the parish development model in their community. They're asking me, how are we being, we are not being consulted on some of these key issues. So, and I think the media now has a critical role to ensure that even within some of these programs that the government is bringing on board to address issues related to livelihoods, health of young people and so forth, you can also play a critical role in finding out to what extent are young people being consulted around those processes. And I think through holding each other accountable, we can be able to have a much more transparent, accountable government that really addresses the specific needs of our young women, our young people, our women, and I think we can be able to have like much better development. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Isaac. So just one last question for Joe and Betty, and we'll hear some concluding remarks from Julius, and we'll open it up for a few minutes. If we're talking about voices of women and youth, I guess the easiest way is to make sure that they are represented themselves. If you're above 18, you can be able to run for parliament, and we have seen some very young people in isolated pockets of Uganda actually being able to win the elections as very young and women as well. So for Joe and for Betty, who are in the media, do you think or feel that the media is, from your perspective, from where you are, is balanced when it comes to candidates? Because normally what happens, and I've had this I think once, it's the reason why I'm asking this question, where someone is running, they are 21 or 22 years old, and then you hear someone on the radio saying, it's this kid, let him first wait, right? Do you think or feel that the media does enough to be able to support even young people and women, for example, who will be contesting even for elective offices? And is there anything in particular that maybe you're doing or think we can do to help support? If someone says, I'm 19, I want to run, I think I'm capable. I mean, in some places, the old people have clearly failed to do anything. So why not,
For starters, we are all aware that how expensive elections are in this country specifically. And even the media, even the journalists themselves, during elections, at a period like this, and all those other past elections, you realize that journalists come out as campaign managers for specific candidates. And that, for me, makes it very hard to hold someone accountable, especially if you were not objective at that point. And for the young people, the youth, the women that, like you say, at 18 or 19, they want to stand, usually if you try to look through very closely in Uganda, for those that come out as parliamentarians or other leaders, they are very supported financially. They are very muscled financially. But for the youth at 19, for example, where I come from, not many of them have even any form of employment, like we know. So it's going to be very hard for them to come through an election where the media, the journalists themselves want the money, and this young candidate has no money at all. So usually during elections, it's a game of money. The one that has money has the journalists covering their rallies, because after the rally, the journalists want transport back. We all know this happens, really. It's not something new. And if a candidate is struggling at 19 and 20 or even 30, even 40, they are good candidates with very good ideas, youth, women, but because they don't have the money, usually, they don't come through. And this is why I think that if we want to have more young people participate, rather than participating as campaign agents, in my place during elections, it is the youth that are violent, it is the youth that are, if the youth support you, you go through. Yeah. And for them, they say, give me what, I mean, if I can, okay, I won't put it in my local language, but they'll be asking like, let me have mine now, because they already know that whoever goes does not even remember. So as journalists, the media has a critical role to play in terms of empowering, in terms of creating space and platforms where people can learn why they are even voting in the first place, or where manifestos can be even questioned or interrogated. Like if you have a radio program or TV program where you're looking at an MP's manifesto, where is the youth? Where are the women in your manifesto? If we were doing that, it would make the process easier, or even service delivery easier.
Yeah. Joe, briefly from you.
Thank you so much. Already they talked about the influence of the financial muscle in case a media house is to invite you or not, or if your stories have to be covered. So you realize that because the youth don't have the money to purchase airtime or just to facilitate their media team, then they are likely not to be included. But just one aspect that I want to add is media houses are also driven with the interest of numbers. If a specific youth, whether female or male, is a celebrity, then likely media houses will pick interest in having them covered. Because if they lose in the aspects of the money, at least they're very sure that they will benefit from the aspect of numbers, which will be brought in after the conversations that you're involved in. So if as a youth, you are much more interested and you can pick the interest of the media houses, a little bit of controversy becomes a secret. Otherwise, if you're not as controversial and you don't have the financial muscle, likely you'll be excluded from the platforms.
Yeah. Very interesting. So again, just for a concluding remark from you, Julius, in terms of, based on what you have had, because we're going into the election cycle now, any commitments you want to make to the people in your panel and the people in the room, as you think about that, and I'll be opening it up for discussion. Quick on-the-spot quiz. How many people know in the room know Uganda's youngest ever MP? Uganda's youngest ever MP. See, this is exactly what we're talking about. You're all journalists. Sorry? Uganda's youngest. You can try. You see, here's my problem. The fact that you're even saying she's a lady, that already suggests that we have a big problem. Yeah, you're not sure. Linda Chibombo, you've been a news editor your entire life. These are things that should be on the tips of your fingers. See, you're actually talking about two different people. So you're talking about Linda is right. The youngest ever was 19 in the 20. Yeah. You see. But what's her name? Idris, please, you stop setting your own question. The question wasn't when her father died. The question was what was her name, right? See, Jan, do you know Professor Lugalambi? I'm putting you on the spot. I'm sorry, but do you know? You don't know. See, Google is your friend. Thank you very much. Patricia Msogang. Alma Helen Wandera, that's the current one. Mama Busia, she's 23 years old. The current youngest MP in the current parliament. But the youngest ever was from before. She was 19 years old when she became MP. And the fact that you don't know both of them should tell you everything you need to know about why we are having this conversation. So I'll allow Mr. Mchunguzi to do a quick wrap up in terms of what you've heard, what you think needs to happen, and then we'll take some quick feedback before we do our last session, which is a very, very powerful one about fostering a safer mental health workplace for the media. And it's going to be our last session for today. And also, I know we're a bit tired, but it's a very powerful session for us to do so. We'll do that in a few minutes. Julius.
Thank you very much. I've taken all of the comments, especially Haz, on the content of the messaging for voter education that the Electoral Commission has out there, to make sure that it is as inclusive and as representative of the various categories of people that are on our voters register. And I mean, the categories are so many. There are young people, there are women. The other day, people with disabilities came and they said your content does not reflect us well. Then after that, the elderly came and they said, you are. So, but we have to continue to strive, because today, in the media space and the communication space, you can no longer say that you are targeting people massively. Yeah. We have to continue.
You're lucky, Julius, that the transgenders haven't come to complain yet.
I am hoping they won't, now that we have. Say. Yes. But we have to continue, and the commitment from the Commission is that we will continue to refine our messaging to make sure that it is relevant to the groups that are different, that have different consumption mechanisms. We have improved. We are improving, and we improved our digital presence, because we are aware that a number of the voters and the people that we reach out to are young people. Young people and technology are like Siamese twins, so we have to make sure that our messaging is consistent with those platforms. But I want to say that in an election period, the media itself is a target, and it has been mentioned. It's a target for misinformation. It's a target for disinformation. The journalists are targets for feeding with fake news. And it means, therefore, that our antennas must be very alert as journalists and as editors to know that no information that comes to you, especially in a political system and a political environment like ours, is innocent. That there is an ulterior agenda to reach people, because they know you have what it takes to reach the people that they want. And therefore, every story that you are working on needs another lens, another look, and another questioning. And so our skills in questioning and interviewing, asking the right questions of the people that want to lead our people, to lead us, ensuring that we interrogate the manifestos, to ask the questions about the interests of young people, so that their content is mainstreamed in how we report. So one of the things that we want to do, we have planned to do, is training, and in partnership with a number of institutions and associations to make sure that we provide the skills to understand the electoral process. That the electoral process is not an event, that the elections of 2026 are not in 2026. They have actually already begun. That in January, when the voters register is updated, if the public, if the people do not participate at that stage, the election is already lost. Because if you don't have the right people in the voters register, the dead are removed, the foreigners are not there, those who moved are not on the register. If the media does not pay attention and raise these stages of the electoral process as important as the end of the voting, at the voting, that we will have failed in our duty to inform and educate our citizens to make informed choices across the competitive political environment that we work in. And I'm very happy, as I conclude, that groups like Media Challenge Initiative have introduced something here called solutions journalism. That we need to ask and question ourselves about the purpose of journalism. Some of the models upon which our training in journalism were based, have been based for centuries, no longer work. That only a story is when a man bites a dog. That it is only a story when it bleeds, that when it bleeds, it leads. But the people who are looking for solutions, our young people who want jobs, our women who want a space, are not going to depend on what it bleeds, leading in the newspapers. That the format, the framing, the choice of headlines, the choice of what we consider to be the story, will have to inevitably move away from the inverted pyramid, where you just say the first two sentences and that is it. That we must be prepared to report on processes. We don't want to report on processes because they are complex. We don't want to report on policies because they are complex. We just want to report on the result because people are saying, who has won? But won what? Won on what basis? What was their agenda? What was their manifesto? What were the issues they stood for? And you're just saying, what is the number? What is the number? What are the totals? We must interrogate the numbers. We must interrogate the figures. We must, as journalists, we must ask questions that don't have a yes or no response. And that is the challenge that is before us. Because the issues that affect young people and women will not be answered with a yes or no. It will require the people who want to lead us, the manifestos of political candidates and the political parties must reflect on what it is they have put in their manifestos that presents the interests of women and young people.
Yeah.
So the journey has just begun, and let us also know that the overall purpose of the elections and whatever we do is for the country called Uganda. And that this country called Uganda will be there after 2026. We will be there with the leaders that we have and the leaders that will come. And that our allegiance should be to building a stable, peaceful, and prosperous country where all of us are able to derive livelihoods and live. And not be held hostage to just a year. And that way we'll begin perhaps to think about solutions and not simply headlines.
I don't think you could have wrapped it up in a better way. Julius, thank you so much. So I'll take just these 3 submissions and then we are done, because I really want us to have that conversation around mental health because it's extremely, extremely important. So if I can, do we have a mic that we can use? Jan, if you'd please be so kind. We'll start with Linda and then we'll go. Guys, in the interest of time, we shall continue the conversation. Just allow me to take these 3. We'll keep them very brief, and then we'll do our final conversation.
Okay, thank you very much for this opportunity, and I will just veer this conversation away from, and I mean back into the newsroom, where I worked for 24 years before I decided to take an early retirement. One, I was alone. I was at NTV, and I was alone as a female among, I think there were 6 male editors. That was the first thing. I cannot say that I fought hard to keep my head above water, but I'm not going to tell you what the inside workings were, but it was not easy. You understand? Because there are very many women issues that need to be addressed. But because you're working with all these men here, I mean, their issues take first priority. That is one of them. Number 2, we are going into a campaign period. And I think we are already, the fact that it's already November right now, I can tell you that this is going to be a very difficult year for newsrooms. And we are going into a campaign period. And because I have worked on a number of elections, 4 in number actually, and 2 at NTV, I know that the campaign period takes maybe about a month or something like that. Tell me which female journalist you're going to send out. She's got a family, she's got children, she's a nurturer, and you're going to send her out for a whole month. Yeah, that doesn't happen. I was at NTV for 10 years, and in 10 years, I saw women up and leave because they had children, because they had gotten married, because, there's a lot. So what happens is then bringing women to replace them gets very difficult. When I was leaving, I asked my editor, Mr. Daniel Kalinachi, and I said to him, Daniel, I would like a female to come and replace me. And he said, go out and look for this female. Go out and see which people you can talk to. And I'll tell you truthfully, one told me if they're not paying me a certain amount of money, which was about 6 million shillings, take home, I will not come. That was one. Of course, she was trying to make it difficult for me. But number 2, another one said, I have a young family, I cannot come to the newsroom. So even within the newsroom, it's becoming very difficult, the conditions. And I have spoken, I think, to ACME about this before in an interview, that for females in the newsroom, it just gets very difficult. But very briefly, I'm just going to talk about a situation that we faced at NTV, and I think it was going on in very, very many places of the world, that there was a situation that was called manels. So instead of having panels, which are balanced, you have male and female, then you are having only manels. And of course, we would want a broadening of divergent views, but it was very difficult to get women at that time. I remember somebody asking me specifically when I called her, because I was a producer, and she said, who's going to be the other person that, on the whatever? And I mentioned the name. She's like, I'm not going to come. But then also when we did our research and we were asking why women, why we're having manels, one of the things that we would get was, one, at the time that you want to call me, that is 9 p.m., I have to be at home with my family because my husband is going to be there, and, food and blah, blah, and that's the time we have supper. 2, someone even tells you, that means I have to go to the salon, I have to do my nails, I have to have a new dress, I have this and this and this. So you understand, then we had to sit down and go back to the drawing board to ask ourselves, how do we solve this problem? Of course, I'm not going to give you the solutions that we found, but I'm just telling you that even within the media houses, within the newsrooms, there is a problem. And I'm sure I am speaking for many media houses.
I don't think you could have put it any better, Linda. It's good to have that perspective from the newsroom itself. So, Jan, just the 2 gentlemen at the back, and then I want us to really do this conversation on mental health. So, again, like I said, this is just a provocation of you to get going. So, thanks a lot. I'll ask that you really...
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. My name is David Mugara. I work for the Netherlands Institute for Multi-Party Democracy. I just want to put a comment on 2 things. One is the big question. Currently, there is, I have to say, a drop in voter turnout for the past elections. And one of the key categories of those who are dropping out are young people and women. And for me, the biggest reflection in the room and where the media can come in is why are people getting so disillusioned and disengaged in the governance processes? And you talked about apathy. it's actually getting deeper and deeper because there is a broken promise. The social contract that was made has been broken. Leaders commit to give service delivery, to represent, to keep in contact. You're talking about local governments. Actually, local governments, about 75% of the citizens that have been interviewed about a year ago, clearly said they have not been in contact with their local leaders. That is district local governments and lower local governments. About 78% of them have also don't believe that they have been effectively represented. So for me, I think the problem is not only at Parliament, but it's quite countrywide in terms of representation. And that, for me, is the broken promise. So for me, the media has a role to keep reminding these leaders. The spaces that you have are not common to everyone. So there is need to keep reminding these leaders about this broken promise, about this promise, so that it keeps in the minds of the citizens. And that is the civic education that we're talking about. Secondly is on the preparation. We're talking about young people's voice in the electoral process. The voice can be active participation, or it can be through informal and indirect participation. So for me, you've talked about the monetary, which is okay, but there is another one that is very key in terms of preparation. We have people that you expect to jump from nowhere into leadership. And you don't expect real quality, even in terms of competition. Many institutions have come up, including political parties, that are making leadership academies. UPC has started a school. NUP has started an academy. Other institutions are also doing academies. The question is, what are they really impacting in these young people? We may be at a risk where these young people are being used as instruments. There is indoctrination maybe in these institutions. So for me, the media has a big role to go down to also do an accountability search in terms of what kind of message are they giving. If we have had a graduation of people from a leadership academy in an institution, people are coming out of Changwanzi, can we have a track? Can the media bring this out? Because at the end of the day, we need to evaluate. Because these are the people that are going to come and join this leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Which is, I think, what Julius was talking about. And don't just report who has won. I think there are so many deeper stories that you could get into.
Yes, thank you very much. Otima Ivan is my name. I work for the African Youth Development Link. Very good discussions coming in. My aspect on the reflection on the discussion and the panelists is on the points that are being raised. And I would like to ask Madam Betty and Joseph, how often do the newsroom take on evaluative approaches to the content? Because when you open your TV and then you look through the content that is coming in, the question that comes through is whether people are really getting attached to this content. But also something that comes through is that if we know the numbers and what the numbers are like, for example, right now we know we're a youthful country, and the numbers are that young people don't like content in the newsroom or probably in a panel-like discussion. How innovative do the newsroom take approaches to get some content to them? In the perspective, like, for example, in this election, we are likely to get a high number, I don't know, Mr. Julius, you can clarify this, a high number of young people voting for their very first time voters. So right now, as Julius has noted, we're interested in the numbers at the end stream. What are the upstream mechanisms for us to have appropriated, targeted messaging to get these young people to turn into the actual numbers, but also then turn them into, the real voices of accountability. Yeah. But also for me, I will ask Mr. Julius then the question as I wind up. How do we enable elections be a yardstick for accountability? Right now, if you run a survey, in this room probably, you'll be surprised that many of the people are not interested in probably going for the next poll. Because why? Elections have ceased to be the mechanism for accountability. Yeah. And that is a very high risk for us in a democracy that we thrive for, because right now, if we want young people to understand how important elections are, then the aspect of accountability has to come into place. So how do we make that nexus between elections and accountability work? Thank you.
Thank you very much. In interest of time, I'll allow only Julius to respond, and even he will have only 30 seconds to do that so that we can do our next panel. As he does that, I wanted to ask a question. How many people in the room know your MP? Do you know your MP? If you know your MP, then you voted for, please put up your hand. Okay. Just half the room. No, you see, it's shocking to you, Linda. I voted for my MP, I don't remember who it is. Yeah, I did. I just don't remember who I voted for. That's the honest truth. I don't remember. So, sorry? It's possible.
But perhaps the big question you should have asked if those who know their LOC1 chairpersons. Because you may know your MP, but does your MP know you? And that is, does your MP know you? But your LOC1 person should know you, because they are the closest to you, to us. So many points have been raised, and elections as mechanism for accountability, and incidentally for the Electoral Commission, really. Our job and the provisions and the mandate stops at making sure that the processes are transparent, they are fair, and that people are able to make decisions through the ballot. The question of accountability now lies on many other institutions, including the media. Because for us, really, we will not go to say, you promised this last time, Mr. President or Mr. MP, why are you coming again to be nominated? That will not be our question. That is a question that must be asked by the citizens, or where the citizens will express themselves through the ballot and demonstrate that they are either happy or they are unhappy. But it goes back to the role of the media, that the media should not drop that ball. The media should not drop the ball after the elections. And often we do that. And we forget, and we wait for 2031. We must plead guilty and apologize to Ugandans for letting them down and waiting for the electoral cycle only when the nominations and campaigns have started. Because that is, by that time, all things have gone wrong. We must avoid a situation where we have to do postmortems and have active and follow-up tracking with solutions journalism, with the questions, with midterm reviews of performance at all levels, so that our elections do not become a simple exercise in routine. And that way, perhaps we'll be able to address the question of apathy, the disillusionment of people, the disinterest in the electoral processes, so that people see that elections actually mean. But that would not be the Electoral Commission. The referee of the game of Arsenal and Man U cannot, there are questions they don't ask. They will not ask why you have not brought this player or that player. We will deal with the players that come in the football pitch. But we must also tell the people who sit in Chirasha, the spectators, to behave. All of us must play by the rules to ensure that we have a clean process, and hopefully through that process we'll have leaders that will live by their commitments, and that they will not be like this man, the picture that I saw of a hyena that was campaigning amongst sheep. And he says, once you vote me, I will become a vegetarian. And we have a lot of politics along those lines. But the commitment of the Electoral Commission, one is that we treat and take young people as very key partners, and we've been very consistent in working and engaging a number of institutions and organizations, youth-led organizations, universities, schools, to make sure that we try as much as possible to get the message of the elections, the purpose of elections, and how they should participate, because inclusiveness and participation and competition are the hallmarks of a good electoral process.
Thank you very much, and a big thank you to our panel. I'll allow them to exit. Please give them a big hand clap. Two quick things. Number one, we have failed to keep time today, and it's entirely my fault. I'm supposed to be the one managing the time, and I have done horribly today. So please blame me. It's also because our conversations have been very, very rich, and it was difficult to just try and curtail them, so bear with me. The second thing is that where we are now, even if you try to leave, you're going to spend another 2.5 hours in traffic. So make yourself comfortable, okay? And don't be in a rush to go anywhere, because even if you try to leave, you're going to just be going out into traffic jam. So just relax and enjoy yourself, and allow us to spend time in each other's company, which is why I want us to just stand so we can get some fresh air. I want us to do a very quick exercise before we talk about mental wellness quickly, and then we will launch the National Journalism Awards as our climax for today. I'm going to ask someone to play a song. I want you to do something for me. I want you to find one person, and I want you to tell them two things. One of them is something that you have struggled with and how you have dealt with it. You can feel free to go, please, as deep as you want or as shallow as you want. To make it easy for you, let's keep it to the work environment. So one thing you have struggled with mentally, right, in terms of your mental health at work and how you have dealt with it. So the way Dr. Garam is going to Linda, I think she refused to host him, so he's going to complain. The second thing is, I want you to tell that person one thing that you are grateful for. So, one, what are you grateful for? And two, what have you struggled with in the workplace, and how did you overcome it? Right? 30 seconds, let's share, and then we'll do our session. All right, please, these are not supposed to be counseling sessions. You can book each other's time for that, right? This was just supposed to be an icebreaker to make sure that we're still awake. So if I can kindly ask that we now then take our seats again, and we'll talk a little bit about fostering a safer mental health workplace, especially for the media. But no one is listening to me now. So as you sit, can I ask that we come closer and just sort of form a bit of a huddle? Let's just make sure that we are in a tight circle, not circle, in a tight, you know. Is anyone listening to anything I'm saying? Because it looks like Yvonne, no one is listening to me. All right, let me ask you to take our seats. Please, let's sit as much as we can in the center and occupy all the seats there. I'll give us 10 seconds to do that, and then we can start. Ziada, you want me to come and now just to grab your hand? Right? Can we try and occupy the middle seats as much as we can? And allow me to welcome to the stage from Strong Minds Uganda, Ronald Sazi, to help us talk about fostering a safer mental health workplace for the media. And also you're welcome, from the African Center for Women in Journalism, Mrs. Vivian Serwanja, who is coming as well. So we can have a very quick but hopefully meaningful conversation around this issue. I see people who are still standing, but you guys, we said we move. I need my cameras to capture, meaningful pictures. The reason that I asked that you do that small exercise where you talk about, something is that one of the problems we have as, I think, human beings a little bit maybe, but more especially as Ugandans, is that we don't like to talk about our problems. I learned many years ago that talking about your problems actually helps a lot. And so these days I very openly and publicly talk about all of my problems, and I get a lot of inboxes from people who are telling me that, you know, hey, what you shared, I was in the same thing, I didn't know it was helpful. And so it's really important for us to be able to talk about how to foster good mental health in the workplace. 1 in 3 people in Uganda has a mental health problem, which means statistically, 1/3 of you in this room, Rose, that means if I look on there, I can say Miriam, I can say Rose, I can say Joe, you guys have mental health problems. Statistically, because it says 1/3 of the people anywhere have. How do we deal with that, especially for the media? I'll start with you, Ronald. If you look at what happens in the media space, especially, on average, I think in the media is where there are no working hours. 5 in the morning, you're in the field. 10 p.m., you're still filing and getting a story done. You probably don't go and live for 6 years in a row. Let's start from there. That has to be a problem, right?
Yeah, I believe it's a big one. Good evening, my name is Ronald. I work as a mental health coach with Strong Minds Uganda. I'm a clinical psychologist. We are already late. On Monday, I was doing a training and I came in late, like at this time, and one of the people in the audience said, I am already depressed. You're coming at this time. We are already tired. I'm already depressed. I have a child home. So what are we going to be doing? I hope this can be as short as possible so that we do not again get people depressed in the room. Anyway, yeah, mental health in the media, as he is saying, I believe it's a very big problem. If you are working with no rest, and then you're not taking leave, but also for me, thinking about what you guys are doing. For us, when we see a dangerous scene, we run away from it. And for you guys that are rushing towards it, to me that is already traumatizing. And thinking about the secondary trauma that you can take from such a scenario, and also from all the stories that you are listening to, you capture very hard stories from people. That is also enough to traumatize and also to depress you. So it is very important that we have such a discussion on how you are able to stay mentally healthy while working in such a challenging work environment. And there are really factors that lead to that, but also there is something we can do to make sure that all of us, though the dynamics of our work is very, very challenging, but we can keep mentally healthy, and it's possible. And that's the reason for the discussion today.
That's very encouraging, yeah. Vivian, if we talk about mental health, one of the things, again, I think Linda touched on it, the challenges she has to deal with, especially from your perspective for women. What are some of the big things that affect, especially women's mental health, in not just newsroom, but generally in media, from what you've seen, from what your members are telling you?
Okay. Thank you, Ben. Good evening, friends. Again, my name is Vivian from the African Center for Women in Journalism. I'll take us back to the newsroom, first of all. Generally, as journalists, and specifically as female journalists, you get in there, and while you go about your work, I'm trying to compound everything. While you go about your work, you'll face trauma, you'll cover pain, you'll cover blood, you'll cover assault, accidents, and all these sorts of things. And now imagine all that pain onto a lady, now in the female, perspective. All the anxiety, all the depression, the burnout, everything will weigh down on you. Whereas as journalists, many a time we want to present ourselves as superhuman, as detached from the story. I mean, you have to remain strong and brave and everything else. But Think about this journalist that's going to cover all this pain, the live shootings. This lady, we saw a story in one of those riots of a female journalist carrying this dying baby that had been shot at. What do you tell this journalist if she heard the next day that this baby, whose life she was fighting so much for, is dead, is gone? This journalist that goes out to investigate a story, and the next day their source is dead, is no more. You know, all these experiences, the scenes of accidents, bodies being cut out of wreckage, and all these things. So many a time, these things weigh down on us, much as we want to detach or to be out of this story. We want to watch the story from a distance and just cover it as objectively as possible. But hey, we remain human. We remain, we still, in some way or the other, whether we accept or not, we in some way will succumb to this kind of, torture and all these experiences. Now imagine this is a lady with all those pressures. You come back to the newsroom. What does your editor want? First thing, what is your story? If it's an accident and there are no fatalities or not big enough numbers, it will not be such a big story. Remember, you've already been, subjected to all these, but you still have to come and sell your story to your editor. For them, all they're waiting for is, what is your story? You tell, okay, and in many cases, if for example, in a set of an accident, if the numbers are small, you went thinking you went running, you did the story, you've been tortured, all the blood and everything, all the scenes at the accident scene. You go to your editor, and because the deaths are not as high as, enough to make that big headline, your story can as well pass for a scroll. In my days, we used to call them fillers, but it does not take away the fact that you've gone through all this pain. At the end of the day, you must give that story. And you cannot add soup to what does not exist in this story. So at the end of the day, we live with all this, and it weighs down on us. Specifically for female journalists, I'll speak a little bit about females. Away from all these pressures, the pressure to deliver, to beat deadlines, to give that big story that, that will make the big headline in the papers or in the news, on TV or radio. These are the pressures. Take, for example, there's this, I'll call them unrealistic standards. I mean, you're supposed to appear a certain way. You're supposed to, change your hair. Someone was mentioning of buying a new dress, buying a new shoe, doing nails and all those things. Not to mention the mega pay and all those financial challenges that we face as women. But, there is this box that you must fit into. These challenges we're talking about are special to women journalists. And this is a topic that's so dear to us as the African Center for Women in Journalism. You talk about gender-based discrimination. There are stories where an editor will ask, which woman would do this story? That is one. That is in the newsroom. Other times, you go to a source and someone will be like, sorry, I'll mention Williams. Ono Williams muntu kigwampereza, because Williams has sent that source a female, and probably they expected some male or some giant, some established person in that sense of a man, but because they've sent them a girl, they'll look at them like they cannot report well enough. I mean, we have to go the extra distance. We do not just present ourselves as female journalists, and that should be enough. We'll have to fit into so many boxes before we actually come off as journalists enough. And all this, at the end of the day, speaks to our mental health. It affects us terribly. We've been talking about people running spaces as though they are journalists, posing as journalists, the space being full of masqueraders and mediocre practitioners. But that is because there is a great trick. They would be authentic are moving out. Yeah. All the journalists that grow in the trade, at the end of the day, look beyond the newsroom. There is so many reasons to this, but one key reason to this is their mental health. Yeah. The burnout in the newsroom is real, particularly for female journalists. So there is a whole lot of...
Yeah, no, I mean, look, I can tell you, I've dealt with this in my own house. My wife used to be one of the lead anchors at NTV for a very long time. And I just saw her struggling for a very long time. You know, she's coming back home at 11. Yeah. For many, if you're not sensitive enough, you're expecting her to come back home, serve you food, and then serve you food. And, sorry? Tea in my case, yeah? Yeah, you guys are switched on, you know. And I think eventually, the one day Rachel comes up to me and says, you know what, babe, I think I'm done. She's like, I'm done. I told her, that's fine. And the following week, she tendered her resignation, and you know, she's still active in the media and all of that, but that whole working, doing, you know, NTV Tonight. And then I think at the time the challenge was that, and Linda again has lived through this a lot, you have one car that is dropping off everyone, so depending on where you live, they're going to drop people in Masulita. By the time Tina has been through this as well, I'm sure, you get home at 1. You're supposed to be, and then you're supposed to be back at 7 in the morning, you have to be in the newsroom. It can be a lot. So I have just one question for Ronald, and then we'll get some quick feedback again before we hear from Professor Lugarambi as we launch the Journalism Awards, which is a very important thing, by the way. What do we do? You're the psychologist here, so these people you see in this room here, many of them, like Linda can tell you, she's pretending she's retired, but the mental health things probably are still lingering in her mind. So what does she do? If you are in this position where you have been struggling with all of these things for a very long time, how do you deal with it? Well, you're in the newsroom at the moment.
Okay, thank you. That's a beautiful question. But before maybe we cross to that, a little going back to her and what she's been talking about, there are so many social pressures that maybe lean towards the women, which we think in so many times that are the contribution to their mentally being ill. But also research shows that women who are also in environments which are equal with the men tend to be more mentally ill than the men. And so there are biological factors to that. And it's important that if you are a supervisor, if you are an employer, that you get to understand that we cannot handle women the same way we handle the men. Women, for example, will go through prenatal depression. Men do not. And prenatals, they experience that probably as they go through their menstruation periods, and also when they get pregnant. They experience postnatal psychosis, postnatal depression, which do not happen to men. Exactly when they go through menopause, towards that time, they tend to get mental illnesses. And it's important for every employer, for every supervisor to understand and know how to handle them. Then you can handle men. I was hearing my mama here talking about all those issues. Yes, we can try to encourage them to build their esteem and what, but there are so many challenges that really face them that do not face the men. And it's important that we really come to understand that. But also for the women to know how to deal with these issues and the stresses of life and be able to keep mentally healthy. And that's why we are here. And I will speak first to the employment, the workplace. How do you develop an environment that fosters mental health where you are working or where you are leading? My slogan as a leader is compassion before commands. And I want to encourage everybody, compassion before commands. How many of us ask for leave when you are physically sick? You have a malaria and it will be granted. Just give me a hand. Where you work, you have malaria which is severe and you're granted leave, sick leave. And so give me a hand if you've ever asked for leave when you have so many disturbing thoughts. And then you're going to your supervisor like, today I feel I'm so burdened in my mind and I want leave. I want a day off.
Wait, in which world do you do that even? Sure. Even you feel like, no.
You see, and that's where we need to come if we are going to combat this pandemic. That's where we need to come. Promoting mental health at the workplace. It's increasing. We are having high numbers of depression in Uganda. We are ranked number 6 in Africa with people that are depressed. 14 million people in Uganda are depressed. And so here we are. We are just brushing them off. We need to come to that. So what do we have to do? Number one, at the workplace, we need to promote a culture of psychological safety. And that's where, as employees and as employers, we are working towards open communication. Everyone is able to communicate openly without fear that they will be held accountable or responsible for what they said. And that's where we need to start from. Before we get there, we are not going to be able to really combat this. But we are working in fear. We are at our workplaces. You want to express yourself, but you're fearing what's going to come out of this. You're fearing of the feedback that is going to come out of what you have said. So at our workplaces, we need to start from there, developing or promoting an environment of psychological safety. And number two, we need to provide essential benefits. Essential benefits. You'll find that we have insurance benefits that do not cover mental health. At some point. So we need to get there. And then also, we need to enforce inclusive policies. When we're talking about health, does that also call for mental health? Or when somebody says sick, we are only thinking about somebody who has a malaria, somebody who has a physical illness. And we are forgetting that mental illnesses are also sicknesses. And we need to come to that. For your information, you have heard it said that all of us are what? Are mentally sick. And that's what people know, and that's what people think. That everyone is mentally ill. It's the degree that what? That differs. Probably that's not true, but mental illnesses are measured on a continuum. And you are at a certain stage of that continuum. You either lie on the illness side or on the healthy side. And we are all candidates. There is a possibility of us traveling this continuum to the side of illness. We need always make sure we are getting to where we can support ourselves and keep mental healthy. Number 3, promote active participation in your workplaces. And so that's for the workplace. What to take for you as an individual? What are you going to do? Number 1, make sure you better your social life. Connections are very, very important to deal with mental health or to promote mental health. Sleep is very important. Yeah, have enough sleep. Exercise regularly. You need to get to that. And I don't know how we can emphasize that, but exercise works miracles when it comes to mental health and even physical illnesses. So it's very, very important. And then you want to make self-care. Craft your self-care structure. Any compassion you are having which excludes you is not enough. We are being compassionate at work and the stories we are capturing, but any compassion that excludes you is not enough compassion. You need to include yourself. Make sure you are caring for yourself. Thank you.
Wow, thanks, Ronald. So I see just 2 small problems, especially for journalists. The first one is, you got that, eh? You talked social life, you guys in the field 24/7. Sleep, so I know, right? The one last thing that I just want to add to this, and then we'll take just two people to respond, and then we'll hand over to Professor Lugalambe, is this. I think in my perspective, what I've seen, the biggest challenge, especially affecting mental health for journalists, at least from where I sit, is this. Everyone knows you. Many times you're popular and famous, and yet you're broke. Everywhere you go, people know you. Instantly walk into a, hi Ben, yay! You know, eh? And then you're thinking, man, where am I getting fuel for next week? I think for me that has always been the biggest source of mental health issues, and I think Mononji agrees with me. Yeah, I'm like that. Eh? So yeah, I don't know why people ever want to be famous. It's just Ronald, Vivian. I wish we had time to continue this, and I know we need to. There needs to be ways to be able to expand this conversation in a big way. But for now, if there are 2 people that need to say something, and even that must be 30 seconds, I will allow those. And then we'll do the launch of the Uganda Journalism Awards. Anyone has anything to say? Vivian, you want to say something? You want to say something quickly before we wrap up?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to speak to the need for organizational policies.
Yeah.
All the things Ronald is talking about are actually possible, but not in our current state.
Yeah.
The way we work today, sleep, what is that?
Yeah.
We do not do those things in the newsroom.
Because people are scared of losing their jobs, right? So, yeah.
You just can't keep both. You're either sleeping or doing your job. But for as long as there is some enabling environment legally, and I think we can all be advocates of this. We can go back and try to push for this. I think it's possible. Slowly, step by step. We may not achieve in a day, but I think if there is a clear policy, I think it will give room to such luxuries.
Yeah.
But for now, where we stand as journalists, it's just not possible. And we're going to keep lamenting and talking about these things. But most importantly, we must mind our mental health.
Yes,
it is big, and it is taking a toll on the newsroom.
It is. Again, I don't hide from talking about this stuff. I have dealt with depression in my life before, so I know what it can be like. And I'm always telling people, it's okay not to be okay. You hear all that stuff, and then, but you'll be fine. What doesn't kill you can only make sure that it gives you trauma. No, it makes you stronger. It's a big thank you to Vivian and to Ronald. And then allow me to welcome Professor Lugalambe to quickly give us an overview of what we're doing. Again, we've ended late. It's my fault. Please blame me. Don't blame anyone else. We'll do better tomorrow, I promise. as we get ready to launch the Uganda Journalism Awards.
Right. Thank you, Ben. You give us an incentive to hang around instead of getting stuck in traffic. So thank you. True story, you know. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for hanging around. I really like the conversation we've just had, because one of the things we introduced in the Uganda National Journalism Awards for the first time last year was what we call the institutional category. And now that institutional category is looking for things that a media house does in terms of institutional development. So this is not just about good stories. This is about a media house that actually creates either an environment, it either innovates with AI, whatever, or creates a working environment that supports the employees, specifically the editorial staff, to grow, to thrive, to prosper. And I'm thinking about if there is a media house over 2024 that as an institution you have done something, probably in mental health, editorial staff welfare, please, we are going to give you an opportunity to enter this competition, and you will receive an award, an institutional award, for doing something to improve the conditions in which your editorial staff work. So it could be an innovation, it could be a product, but it doesn't have to be an editorial product. It can actually be something, you know, that either in the area of safeguarding your female staff, introducing a gender policy, introducing, you know, health insurance, anything that you have done, protecting your staff, you know, in any particular way. So as we shall introduce the categories of these awards, that is something that we thought was very important, because we appreciate that good journalism, quality journalism, thrives in a context, right? It thrives in an ecosystem, in an institutional setting that actually supports journalists professionally in terms of their welfare and all these other things that actually take that what it takes for people to do good journalism. So this is why we are really excited about the evolution of these awards. And the 2025 Uganda National Journalism Awards will recognize excellent journalism in 2024. So from January 1st to December 31st, 2024, we'll be looking to find excellent journalism, you know, over that period. And around May, June next year, we shall be having a big ceremony. And I think those of you who have participated in these awards, you've really seen how glamorous they are and how inspiring they are. So we've been talking a lot today, you know, about the challenges of journalism, the challenges of the media. And the thing now is, can we talk about a solution? And as the African Center for Media Excellence, we think that inspiring, rewarding, and celebrating good journalism, outstanding journalism, is part of the solution. Because journalists work extremely hard, isn't it? Journalists don't get enough sleep. As Vivian said, you ask a journalist, what is sleep? Did you have enough sleep? What is sleep? Can't even define sleep anymore, you know? They work extremely hard. They go, you know, it's very stressful. You know, as Linda said, you've been in this career. So how can we as an industry recognize and reward? Because I think it's very important in terms of, you know, people culture, rewarding and celebrating success is very important. And that is what we have been doing as the African Center for Media Excellence through the Uganda National Journalism Awards for 10 years. And next year, the 2025 awards are going to be the 11th edition of these awards. And we've been working with you know, our corporate partners, you know, over the years to support these awards. And many of you here, you know, have either won some of these awards or you have participated. And the reason we find this particular audience very, very important, because one of the things we have said is that sometimes either journalists are so humble, or they are shy, or they don't have the confidence to enter their work in the competition. So when the competition is done, people come up to you and say, but you know what? I saw a good story by Ben last year, and how come this story is not in this competition? So if you think that Ben or Linda did a good story, approach them and say that, please, this is a good story. I believe you should enter this story in the competition, so that it is subjected to this process and get recognized. And we've, over the 10 years, we've collected a huge database of these stories. And these stories have been the basis of the training programs that we do, because we evaluate them. We have an independent panel, and the current chair of the panel is Ben Oluka, as you know, very renowned investigative journalist. He himself has participated in this competition. He's won these awards. So he really, really knows what it takes. So this is the Uganda, the 11th edition of the Uganda National Journalism Awards. We call UNJA 2025. So we shall take you through a brief presentation and probably video, just to give you an overview of what these awards look like. I need also to emphasize that over the years, the awards have evolved as well. For instance, we've moved away from format. In other words, a couple of years ago, you could be awarded. We have categories on radio, on television, on online. We could have awards on investigative journalism, explanatory journalism, and all these different journalistic formats. But over the years, we got feedback, and we said that, people do not consume radio. People do not consume television. People consume the content of radio, the content of television, the content of digital, the content of whatever you have on your platform. So what we are saying is that we shall focus, because we're talking about public accountability, this competition will focus on the content of the public affairs that the journalists cover. And so you are free to enter this competition, in a specific subject category, in whatever journalistic format, such that if it is a hard news story, an investigative story, it is going to compete, because at the end of the day, how compelling a story is, if you reported it investigatively or whatever, it is how compelling, the presentation of your story is in whatever format, in the subject that you have selected, that will win you an award. That is what we are going to be looking for. So there are two categories. There is the institutional category, as I said, where you can enter this competition as a media house. And there is a very specific, clear, rigorous criteria that you will have to make your case and say that for us, as NBS, as NTV, as New Vision, as big media, we have done something as an institution, right, to improve or to innovate a product, or in terms of organizational development, anything, that has built your media house as an institution. And then we've also got topical categories, which are based on subject matter. So as you'll say, we've got health, we've got agriculture, and very specifically, again, in responding to public needs. We've also we're looking at also this competition as a way of showcasing and spotlighting and drawing attention to critical subjects. So there are some very specific categories that we've worked with partners. For instance, we've worked with a company or an organization called Palladium that is supported by the British, and we have partners from the British High Commission, right? They work with Palladium, and they have said, and we reached out and we said, climate change is a very, very big issue, and this story is either not getting the attention it deserves, and how can we use this competition to put a spotlight on subject like climate change. We are having discussions with our partners at DWA, again, to pay particular attention to areas like public accountability, public service journalism. And so over the years, we've had partners who have been coming on board and saying that how can we use this competition to incentivize and motivate interest among journalists, among the media, on some of these very specific subjects that at the moment appear to be niche areas of coverage, but we are hoping that as we work with our partners, and we hope that other partners will come on board. Twaweza, for instance, over many years we worked with Twaweza, and Twaweza said that, we're doing a lot of work, investing a lot, in public service and especially in education. And they said, can we support a category on education? And sorry? And Deutsche Welle Academy, of course, TWA in public service. And so the idea then was we embraced that category, and even when the funding stopped at that time, as ACME, we took it on, we embraced it, and we incorporated it in the category, in the competition. And so we are continuing with the Deutsche Welle Academy, again, as I said, in the area of public accountability, in the area of public service journalism, and we are hoping that other partners will be coming on board in their areas of specific interest. So my colleague Flora Duke is now going to take us through the categories, and then so she'll take us through the categories and the structure of the competition. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Oh, good evening. You all look dull. We are talking about winning here. My name is Flora Duke, Senior Program Officer at ACME, and I'm here to tell you about the UNJA Awards. Like George has spoken, awards are really how we are going to celebrate the media, because our media is doing a fantastic job, okay? So we as ACME are coming before them and saying, we see you, we hear you, and we are partnering with you to change the society. So right now you can see those are the categories. I beg your pardon. The person doing the slides, please start from the first slide. Okay, so as you can see, those are happy winners of the awards last year. And so basically, like we've already said, these awards are organized annually, and this is now the 11th year. And they're basically celebrating the fantastic work that our media are doing in the different spaces. That is another amazing winner. And you may ask, what are awards about? In your life, you will fail many times, but that day you win something. You will know that you're appreciated, you're seen, you're motivated to pursue the highest professional standards. And we also want to spotlight journalism in Uganda. Uganda is not only about the good food and the weather, Well, and also we want to improve the quality of journalism. So just a couple of numbers. So far since 2014, there have been 2,500 journalists who have participated in this. And we have also had an average of 60 media houses participating in these awards. And then also 200 awards have been given out for outstanding journalism. And just looking at also those who attend the galas, 300 in person and 200 online. And this year we are looking forward to a lot more attending this. So I'll just let you watch a short video just to take you back in time.
Journalism awards are the only way you can appreciate and repay journalists.
Can we have some sound, please?
Everyone who does well deserves to be appreciated.
It's a beautiful feeling being recognized in a public for the first time.
The ACME Awards have really pushed us to do better.
These awards, ladies and gentlemen, are an encouragement, an appreciation for all of us who wake up to dare to go where many of you fear. It's an appreciation and celebration of journalists who go to the front line and cover stories.
I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations to all the nominees tonight. Your work inspires us, and we are grateful for your dedication.
We celebrate you because you were confident and brave enough to put your work out there for scrutiny, and that alone demonstrates your faith in your abilities as a journalist.
Over the last 10 years, we've seen young reporters coming to the pulpit, and I was just there celebrating, hearing new names that were walking to the podium. It means that journalism is still alive in this country.
I think more than ever, we need proper journalism.
There are some things you won't have control over. I think the people from Strong Minds will talk about this.
As we go through all these changes, we need a shield that will keep the entire talent crew that we are rewarding tonight to stay in their jobs.
Yeah, so the video will be played again at the end. Can I have the slide after the video? Okay, so specifically I'll just highlight the new categories that are in this competition. That's the climate change reporting. Now this climate change reporting is really our way of elevating journalism on climate, because this is a really critical area, and we are proud to have partners with the Climate Smart Job Initiative that is funded by the UK government's International Climate Fund. So we know that we are going to do amazing things and make an impact on the climate. And another category as well that I will mention is the Public Accountability Reporting Award. And this we are doing in partnership with DW Academy. And it is really significant because for us this is a way that we can support accountability in journalism, and also it will show our commitment with our partners and it will show the commitment with our partners to promote transparency and governance through the media. Then there is the institutional award, again, a really big one that George spoke about, that is going to recognize media institutions that are exemplifying the highest standards of journalism. This will be in their practice in terms of fairness principles, humanity, and accuracy in their reporting. And a lot of the things we've mentioned here will really be covered in what that media house does. And these are our partners over the years. We just want to thank them very much. As you can see, Stanbic, CNOC, NSSF, CIPESA, Total, ERA, Uganda Drug Authority, Traweza, UCC, Uganda Bankers Association, DTB, Centenary Bank, among others. So we are really grateful for them bringing us through this journey. And also just to make a call out there, you can join this, let's change the face of journalism in Uganda together. So partners out there, we are waiting for you. So these are the timelines. So today we are launching the awards, and so the portals will be open for submissions. And then between March and May 2025, entries will be sorted and assessed by our expert panel of judges that is chaired by Benon Oluka, a very experienced journalist. And then in June 2025, a shortlist will be announced, and then we will have the UNJA 2025 gala night. I hope some of you in this room will be smiling on the podium with your awards. Okay? So you may ask yourself, why should you even participate? You have a chance to compete with your peers and to celebrate journalism excellence. You can assess your work as well. You know what they say? We all think our mom's cooking is the best, but I mean, try the neighbors. You'll be surprised. And you can also boost your career and personal profile. And because these awards open doors to so many opportunities. So don't miss out on that. And then, of course, public recognition for your exceptional and impactful journalism. Yeah, so there we are. The portal is open on the ACME website, www.acme.ug.org. Please log in there and find out how you can enter into whichever category. Okay, and right now I'd just love to call on our partners so we can officially launch through a gesture. Please, you can MFA and MCI, you can join George and Benon, please.
Journalism awards are the only way you can appreciate and repay journalists.
Everyone who does well deserves to be appreciated.
It's a beautiful feeling being recognized in a public for the first time.
The ACME Awards have really pushed us to do better.
These awards, ladies and gentlemen, are an encouragement, an appreciation for all of us who wake up to dare to go where many of you fear. It's an appreciation and celebration of journalists who go to the front line and cover stories.
I would like to extend my heartfelt congratulations to all the nominees tonight. Your work inspires us, and we are grateful for your dedication.
We celebrate you because you were confident and brave enough to put your work out there for scrutiny, and that alone demonstrates your faith in your abilities as a journalist.
Over the last 10 years, we've seen young reporters coming to the pulpit, and I was just there celebrating, hearing new names that were walking to the podium. It means that journalism is still alive in this country.
I think more than ever, we need proper journalism. As we go through all these changes, we need a shield that will keep the entire talent crew that we are rewarding tonight to stay in their jobs.
At ACME, our goal is really simple, to try and ensure that journalism itself is thriving in spite of the environmental challenges that we may be having with it.
The African Center for Media Excellence, we celebrate you. Thank you so much for celebrating us every single year.
When I see radio journalism being awarded, I think it tells through the efforts that we as radio journalists put into this industry.
You're all winners in your different capacities, and we thank you for being part of this competition. Thank you.
I'm just surprised. These awards have been going on 11 years, and I've never hosted them or won an award. There's something that we need to, there's something we need to fix. There's something that's not right. Okay, the moment has come. So what we'll do is, I think we'll have photographers ready, and then we'll do the unveiling. You just pull the cloth, and then we'll do a group picture. I hope there's some nice funky music. We forgot to put confetti though, but it's okay. That's for the award night, not for today. So we'll count down together from 3, 2, 1, and we unveil the 2025 Uganda National Journalism Awards. And a big thank you to, of course, all the partners, to Tina and Ra from the British High Commission, of course, ACME, and the rest of the team, to MCI, and our lead adjudicator, Mr. Oluka. So we'll just make sure you're looking at the camera, please. Benson, they'll take a picture of Yunga. You're showing teeth in a bad way. You don't want to do that. Always be scared when you see a camera near you. Let's make sure we get a good picture, because this is what goes out. We need this for social media. We need to make sure that we put this out and make sure it goes out well. And as we take the pictures, allow me to say thank you so much for being with us till now. Hopefully we'll see you again tomorrow. Big thank you to Julius for spending your day with us, to the entire team here at MCI, behind the scenes, the media crew. Thank you guys so much, Human Rights Commission, and everybody who has been with us. We'll try and make sure we start on time tomorrow. I promise I will do better with timekeeping. I promise. Otherwise, we are done for the day. Don't be in a rush to go anywhere. I wasn't joking. There are still heavy traffic jam outside, so if you can stick around and have a nice cup of coffee, please do that, and interact with each other. But otherwise, we're done for today, so we'll see you tomorrow. Yeah, don't forget, Defenders Protection is here in case you need to have your gadgets checked. You're able to do that today. You can do that tomorrow as well. You can come with your laptop and they'll check it for you. Make sure it has no bugs and things like that. So they can clean your gadgets. They can do all of those things, yeah. So yeah, also if you want to do some pictures for social media, for, you know, your status or stati and all of that, you're more than welcome to come do that. I see Jan has already started. So yeah, otherwise we'll see you tomorrow.